Hi, I'm Cathures,
And I'm Shockbert.
and today we are sharing a body because we had a bunch of problems with the audio in the last part.
For the past two videos, there were some major audio issues that started popping up. It was like sort of bad in the last one, and we had to go back and fix it and had to re-upload the video as well. And then really bad in the last one. We didn't do anything different. Technology and computers.
From a technological standpoint, I think the two audio tracks are getting out of sync because the USB bus is overloaded. I'll need to get an audio interface or whatever.
But we went to Fish Monster anyway, so
Yep. And this is the easiest way to give everybody the best audio experience possible without blasting your ears with weird echoes and stuff, which
just
were
going
torturous.
back to sharing a body and splitting a mic, and
Yeah.
But we'll get back to it. We'll get it figured out, but we'll get through Monster first. So
Yeah, Monster's more important to Shock than fixing the audio.
that's right.
So yeah, yeah,
Well, fixing the visuals.
yeah.
Audio should be
The
good for you guys.
mic's fine. Yeah, it should be mic should be fine as long as we don't like touch the mic. Because I was
And
just
I
trying
like to
not
listen
touch
to
it.
these, and we were missing a few, like even trying our best, we were missing a few places where it was like blah blah. There was still like the weird audio things.
Also, like the problem is like most people wouldn't even notice it. Like I didn't notice it, but Shock is an absolute like really picky like audiophile person who wears like headphones and is picky about the sound, so any little bit that was out of sync she's like, I can't handle this. So
Yes.
so this is the situation.
Anyway, starting from where we left off.
I think the last part was, how could Drew have written something so inflammatory about poor harmless Mr. Button?
That's right. Poor harmless Mr. Burton.
Yeah, Mr. Button, who's never done anything wrong ever.
Out of curiosity, I went to see if like there were any other videos that anybody else had posted about this story. I found one, just one, talking about how mean Drew picks on poor harmless Mr. Burton. The same opinion as Liam in this story, which I thought was pretty funny. So.
Yeah. Yeah, if you looked at it and it was like, yeah, there's no correlation between this story and FNAF in general. And it's like, okay then.
Couldn't the pizzeria owner, and you guys, it'll get more. We'll see.
Also, for the sake of like YouTube transcripts, if they look at that, this is Tales from the Pizzaplex, FNAF. It's a read through. It's part 2. Just in case that's part of the analytics. I don't know what the hell YouTube does. Right. So Liam was so ashamed of what Drew had written that he was more than a little reluctant to go to work that afternoon. They lived in a little town, and the school paper was read by more than just the students at their school. For a start, that's weird. Who shares the school paper with like your whole community?
Drew's a good writer. What can I say?
He's a genius. Just seems weird. Let's see. And the school paper was read by more than just the students at their school. Hold on, this is gonna drive me crazy. Covering up this wee sparky bit. Because I can see it. The town itself had a small weekly paper, but under Drew's direction, the school paper came out 3 days a week. Go figure. Drew might have been the laziest, most entitled person Liam knew, but Drew still worked his butt off for something that didn't even pay. Yeah, he won't clean at his job, but he'll make a paper for free.
That's right.
Liam had to admire Drew's passion. Liam had yet to find something that lit him up the way journalism lit up Drew. Because of the paper's popularity, Liam knew that someone would have brought the article to Mr. Button's attention, and if people had actually done what Drew asked them to do, Liam cringed at the very thought. When he walked into the back of Just a Pizza, Liam could tell that Drew's article had indeed made an impact. The kitchen, usually hopping this time of day, was still and silent.
Nobody should be going into Freddy's. They're murdering people in there.
I know. Like Mike's like, I can't believe you ruined the custom at this friendly family pizza place, and it's like, it's Freddy's though. Like, also, Just a Pizza is the most sus pizza name of all time.
It's so funny that your little like crime instincts lit up at
Just a Pizza. I'm like, just a pizza, nothing else, just a pizza. I'm like, okay. Only Rob, one of the cooks, was walking around the long, narrow stainless steel filled space. And he was walking slowly. Liam froze in the doorway as he stared at the too calm kitchen. As Drew's best friend, he felt partly responsible for what Drew had done. He couldn't bring himself to enter the restaurant. Rob, a short, balding, 30-something guy, frowned over at Liam. Where's that Yahoo friend of yours? He asked. What does that mean? That's rude. Yahoo. The friend in question shoved past Liam. Liam nearly jumped out of his skin. He hadn't heard Drew
Aw,
arrive.
creepy.
So Drew moves quietly. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Rob pointed a thick finger at Drew. Can you say shoot yourself in the foot? What? Drew blinked and looked around as if genuinely baffled. Liam finally came all the way into the restaurant. He ducked into the tiny employee's room off the kitchen. The room contained a small cherry dining table, who cares, Scott? 6 ladder-back chairs and a sideboard that held a microwave and a coffee maker. I'm like, you could have just omitted that line and no one would have...
No, it's
like,
important.
staff
The
room.
environment. And in FNAF, you know, like, the environment's pretty much all we have, right? Like, it's an
Yeah.
environment game, and
I'm just always like, why though?
God
Oh look,
cares
if I
about it.
block my little like face thing, it freaks out. I'm like, maybe you should be over here, man. It's a bit weird. No. Ladder back chairs, a sideboard with a microwave and a coffee maker, a narrow bookshelf that had been rescued from an old Carnegie library, Mr. Button had said, sat against the cream and burgundy striped wallpaper that covered the room's walls. Okay, so we really needed to know what that staff room looked like. It was really important. Liam dropped his backpack on the bottom shelf. 2 purses and another backpack were already on a couple other shelves. Liam went into the kitchen. Just as he did, Mr. Button came through the swinging doors leading to the dining room. Deb and Tracy, 2 of the other employees, trailed behind him. The kitchen's lighting wasn't as good as it should have been. Orders were often mixed up and ingredients were frequently confused because some of the original lighting had stopped working and Mr. Button hadn't had it fixed.
Okay, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Orders
Again, you're
and
talking
ingredients
about,
were
again,
confused.
they're like, wow, he's so good, he's so this, he's so that, and it's like he's got the entire kitchen in darkness.
Also, this is an allergy risk.
Yeah. I've got a nut allergy. I would be mad. I would be like, no, don't put like peanuts in my food by accident. I'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like...
But there's something I think...
And this is also Freddy's, again, I guess.
The kids get all mixed up together.
But this is also Freddy's. Like, the kitchen doesn't have any, like, it's broken. Like, because, you know, like, conspicuously the kitchens in FNAF have, like, no... What'd you call it? Sound or whatever. Although they've only got a sound feed,
FNAF,
they don't have a video
in the FNAF one, yeah, you can't see into the kitchen, and then FNAF 2, the kitchen seems to be missing. There seems to be no kitchen. So
that or it's not on the network or something. Yeah. When Mr. Button walked into the room, he moved in and out of 2 of the shadows in one of the bright spots. As he did, his face went dark, and then his eyes lit up unnaturally. It was a trick of the eye, Liam knew, but given the reference to demons in Drew's articles, it was unsettling. For just an instant, Liam could have believed he'd gotten a glimpse of Mr. Button's hidden persona, a persona of corruption and wickedness.
So I'd like to say immediately, like, that doesn't happen. Like, humans don't do that.
No, our eyes don't light up in the dark.
Some animals.
Yeah.
Humans. The trick of the eye.
His eyes lit up unnaturally.
No.
We don't have a corpus luteum, it's called? Yeah, we don't have that. Only, like, it's a reflective thing that only predatory animals really have. Like, you've got crocodiles and stuff.
His instincts are telling him, ugh, you know, and but he brushing it aside.
Then Mr. Button pushed his glasses down his nose. Over the top of them, he peered at Liam and Drew, and he smiled. The smile might have been a little strained, maybe a lot strained, but it wasn't an evil smile. It was just an ordinary old man's smile.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, Liam thought Mr. Button looked hurt. His eyes were more watery than usual. See, that's not what happens when you're sad either, exactly. It's only when you're going to cry that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Liam immediately felt like an idiot for letting Drew's imagery influence how he saw kind old Mr. Button. Hey, Mr. B, Liam said lightly as if nothing out of the ordinary was going on. Mr. Button attempted to match Liam's levity. Hello, my boy. Hello, hello, he said.
That's phone guy. Why do we get all the phone guy William references?
Hello,
we met phone guy. He's Ralph.
The joviality in his voice was a tad fake. And the chuckle that came after the greeting was more so. Mr. Button was obviously forcing himself to be a good sport. So it seems we have some discontent in the ranks, Mr. Button said. He didn't look at Drew at all. He took off his glasses and used the tail of his yellow and white striped shirt to clean the lenses. Also, yellow and white striped shirt, isn't that like pretty much what William wears in the movie?
Yep.
2 seconds, that's good. I think it is. Where are you, movie?
When I drew Mr. Burton, I drew him with that kind of shirt.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm being like the bit where he's like can't count. Yeah, it's a
Kind
very
of
like
beige.
it's a
Beige and
bit
blue.
yeah, but it's very like the whole scene is very yellow graded is the thing. That's why you have the
Yeah, I see
impression.
what you mean. Yeah.
See it well like the whole thing is graded. Those yellow chairs like
Mm-hmm.
this scene's theme is yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no red or anything. It's all yellow.
Spring Bonnie.
Yeah. Mr. Button looked around at his employees. No one said anything. Deb, short and petite, tugged at one of her honey blonde curls as she looked sideways at Tracy. Tracy crossed her thick arms over the front of her burgundy apron. Tracy was a soft-spoken, friendly woman and built like a linebacker. Liam wouldn't have wanted to get on her bad side. Drew, however, didn't even notice the way her dark eyes narrowed under her long brown bangs when she looked at him. Drew just smirked. His gaze drilled into Mr. Button as if he was challenging the old guy to confront him.
So, kind of interesting here. We have a soft-spoken woman with dark hair and a blonde, curly woman. He has 8 employees, like we said. I don't know if they represent some of the missing kids, like Susie and Cassidy here, but
I don't know. I just think they're like probably just side characters. We don't hear enough about them for them to matter. I don't think.
Yeah.
I've never thought of myself as a miser, Mr. Button said, and surely I don't intend to pinch pennies. I apologise if that's what you think I've been doing. Tracy immediately stepped over to Mr. Button. She towered over him as she put her powerful arm around his narrow shoulders. That's not what we think. She flashed another dark look at Drew. At least that's not what most of us think. Deb nodded vigorously. You've always been more than fair to me, she said to Mr. Button.
Also in the novels, the kids step in to defend William.
Yeah.
Like Susie's like, no, he helped me find my puppy. He's a good guy.
Mr. Button reached out and patted Deb's arm. Thank you, my dear. That's very kind. Even so, he cleared his throat. I've decided to give you all across the board $1 per hour raise. I've already contacted the others who aren't here and let them know the raise will be reflected on your next paycheck. No one said anything at first. Then Tracy and Deb both hugged Mr. Button and thanked him. Rob clapped Mr. Button on the back and shook his hand. Liam mumbled an awkward thank you. Drew smirked some more and remained silent. Drew's like, you gave in to me immediately. Rob turned and speared Drew with a long stare. Maybe you should use that poison pen of yours to retract what you wrote.
I love that line.
If you don't, there won't be enough business to cover the raises Mr. Button just gave us all. Drew still remained silent. He just tied on an apron and walked out of the kitchen.
They're like, you gonna take it back? And Drew's like, no.
No. And he's like, thanks, bye. Thankfully, business picked up as the afternoon went on. Not everyone in town had seen the article, obviously. They had enough customers to keep them busy until closing. By then, Liam had convinced himself that the aftermath of Drew's article would be short-lived. As Liam lost himself in the normal closing chores, some of the tension he'd felt since he'd read Drew's article had begun to recede. Liam was even whistling when he started to pull the mop bucket into the men's restroom. His whistle caught in his throat, however, the second he spotted Mr. Button standing at the white sink opposite the restrooms, 2 urinals and 1 enclosed stall. Hunched over the sink, Mr. Button was washing his hands. This in and of itself wasn't noteworthy. Mr. Button washed his hands a lot. It wasn't Mr. Button's over and under, hand over hand motion or the soap frothing over his knuckles that froze Liam at the spot. What turned Liam to stone and sucked the breath from his lungs was the bright red blood that splashed against the sink's stark white porcelain surface. Liam swallowed hard as he watched blood-pink soap dripping from Mr. Button's wrists. Mr. Button raised his head. He looked into the mirror and his eyes narrowed. He spotted Liam in the mirror's reflection. He turned. And this is interesting because, again, we could go on at length. I've made a whole video about William's relationship to mirrors. You can see agony in the mirror. Like, that's one of the things we see in hide and seek. Like, you can see, like, your shadow behind you, even if you can't see it in real life.
That's right.
And he's looking in the mirror and narrows his eyes in the mirror and then spots Liam and goes, oh, hi.
This is also the first flash of a shark fin of something even worse going on in this story.
Yeah.
So far it's just been a few little...
And if I remember correctly, like, the eventual explanation we get for this... No, I'm not going to say it. But I don't think I don't like any explanation we get for this later. I don't think actually accounts for it properly in my mind either. Like, I don't think the things that were given. Yeah,
weird and weirder things happen in this story, and there is a explanation thing, but we'll go over.
Yeah. When we get there, we'll thing it. But yeah, it's just there's some interesting stuff like to do with that.
But yeah, I would say the first really ominous event here.
Yep. Mr. Button raised his head. He looked in the mirror and his eyes narrowed. He spotted Liam in the mirror's reflection. He turned. Liam dropped the mop he was holding. It clattered to the floor as Liam's gaze was caught in Mr. Button's stare. Mr. Button's pupils were black pinpricks in the middle of blue irises that looked as hard as a flash-frozen lake. Not to interrupt again, but one of the main things that people say about like serial killers in particular, antisocial like psychopaths, the other, is that they have very cold eyes, and it's hard to even explain like what that means or whatever. But people always say it. You know, they have cold, staring eyes. They don't blink enough. There's something unsettling about the way they look at people, and it's something that you see like pretty uniformly. Like
William's depicted as
described. Yeah, Scott describes William as a psychopath plenty of times. He's a serial killer, obviously. It's just interesting that we see that here as well. It's that like there's something cold in his eyes.
There was one last thing we had been thinking about, you know, the Mr. B. Why is it Mr. B names? Like Mr. Burroughs, Mr. Burton instead of Mr. A names? But there is another character in the series that William associates with that starts the B, and that's Bonnie or Bunnies.
Yeah, Bonnie, Bunnies, yep.
So.
For a few seconds, time seemed to stop. Liam could hear his heart pounding in his ears. Then Mr. Button turned back to the sink. "I'll be done in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail," he said. He held his hands under the water flowing through the tap, and he began splashing the water over the sink, rinsing away the bloodstains. Button made no mention of the blood, and Liam was too unsettled to ask about it.
Yeah. So we see Liam here. Liam's already used to, like...
He kind of challenges Liam. He's like, "You're a coward. You're not going to question me about this. I'll be done in a minute." You know what I mean? Like he doesn't even need to explain it. He knows he won't question him.
And he doesn't, yeah.
Liam bent over to pick up the mop. By the time it was back in his grip, Mr. Button had wiped his hands and was heading towards the restroom's door. As he passed Liam, he said, "I'll get out of your hair." Mr. Button patted Liam's shoulder. Liam stiffened and didn't move for a full minute after Mr. Button let the restroom door swing shut behind him. So again, like, all Liam's instincts are like, something is off, something is off.
It's a friendly gesture, but he reacts badly to it.
Yeah, and normally, like, everybody seems fine with that. You know, obviously there are people like hugging him and all that, and the staff meeting. Liam's just like, all his instincts are like, something isn't right. Even though they worked together every evening the rest of the week, Liam and Drew didn't talk much. They only shared 2 classes at school, and for the remainder of the week, Liam spent his lunch hour working out instead of eating. Truth be told, he was avoiding his friend. He hadn't gotten over his embarrassment. Drew, who definitely didn't need the money, had strong-armed poor Mr. Button. Liam felt awful about it. On Saturday, however, Liam had to spend time with Drew. The 2 of them had been paired up in their history class. They were supposed to put together a presentation on some aspects of Celtic folklore for a history fair coming up in a few weeks. Scott really likes Celtic folklore.
Sure does.
Like, obviously, like, that's one of my, like, specialist subjects-ish.
I think kind of interesting. Obviously, we're in Scotland. Scott's name is Scott. And when he named the vengeful spirit Andrew, Andrew's a very common name here because Saint Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland.
Yeah, like in Scotland, if you meet a guy, it's a good guess that he's either called Andrew or Scott. Like that's a pretty good shout. There's a lot of Andrews at work. Like I work with like 3 Andrews or something.
Or Andy.
Something like that. Andy. Yeah, people go with Drew, Andy, Andrew, whatever. Like they have to go with variants so that you know who it is you're talking to. You know, like it's just there's it's a real common name.
But in GGY we get mentions of the Morgan and
yeah, and specifically like all the greater gods, the ones like the Dagda and all that, and his pseudonyms, and there's mentions of the Fae and stuff like the she like Ace, she and all that. But yeah,
it's one of Cathures' like special interest subjects.
Yeah,
we have
no
a bunch
kidding.
of Scottish folklore mythology books.
Yeah, I write like a whole roleplay like set in like Celtic mythology stuff. Yeah, so Scott's always like draws attention to the mythology. Like he's always like, "Hi, I'm Bob. My name means this. It's a thing from a mythology thing." Like he always like gives you more context.
And it feels stupid to say, but I feel like that Scott's name is Scott, like Scottish stuff, and he puts Henry's kind of his like self-insert OC, and I feel like that's why he puts like kind of Scottish mythology stuff and pairs it with William and William, or Henry and Henry's family.
I know. I think even if it's subconscious, I think he just likes like Scottish stuff. His surname is an English surname, but I think he's I don't know. Who knows? It's just Scots are very Scottish name. They figured they could get a lot done before their evening shift at Just a Pizza. Liam and Drew's get-togethers were becoming increasingly rare. When they did see each other outside of school, they always met up at Drew's house. Drew had only been in Liam's new home twice, and it had felt awkward in the extreme. Drew made it seem like he was slumming, and Liam felt like he had to apologise for every cheap thing in the place. It was a sunny afternoon, so Liam and Drew set up laptops at the outdoor table in the back deck. Drew's mom had a green thumb, and the yard was lush. The thick green lawn was perfectly even and free of weeds. It was surrounded by planting beds filled with flowers in every conceivable colour. Liam knew nothing about flowers, so he didn't know the names of all the profusion of blooms that he could see around them. All he knew was that they were pretty and they smelled sweet. So did the freshly mowed grass.
Henry's family, again, has associations with, like, gardens, life. I think there's just some kind of...
Saturday afternoon, neighbourhood sounds wafted into the yard from beyond the cedar fence that enclosed it. Liam could hear the even rhythm of a bouncing ball out in the street, the screams of little kids combined with the spurt of a sprinkler in the house next door, and a dog barking a few doors down. Closer to the deck, intermittent chirping came from a clump of bushes at the edge of the lawn. Liam looked over and saw a handful of sparrows hopping about in the beauty bark under the bushes. Liam inhaled all the yard's amazing scents. Can you imagine living in nature inside buildings like we all do now? He waved at a nearby bush. Drew grinned and pointed a finger at Liam. You going to be a writer now? Liam laughed. Not hardly. You know I'm better with numbers than I am with words. Drew nodded. That's true.
That's interesting here too, where he's good at math.
Yeah. Liam tried to get them focused. But I have been doing some reading and... I've been reading too, Drew interrupted, and I've come up with an angle. He opened his laptop. Liam was only a little annoyed at the interruption. He was used to it. He watched Drew's face as Drew tapped his keys and then turned his laptop so Liam could see the screen. I think we should do our presentation on kelpies, Drew said. Yeah. Kelpies? Yeah, Drew said. They were Scottish shapeshifters that could turn into animals, and they're technically Irish. We kind of have like a different whiskey or whatever, but whatever. Humans taking other forms, or other beings taking human forms, werewolves, stuff like that. Yeah, and this is all interesting. Again, it's the shape-shifting creature thing. Yeah, the twisted wolf. William is very associated with twisted wolf, I'm pretty sure. Does he not have the Wolf Man poster behind him? And
it's in UCN, and it's in the barn in Help Wanted.
Yeah, it's in the barn. I just couldn't remember if his screen was specifically the one that had it. 2 seconds. Like, you know the one with, like, Scrap Trap?
Oh, behind him? When he's in the alleyway?
I couldn't remember which one. I think he might have the Fall Fest one.
He has, there's, like, a big building or whatever, and it says, the one with the trunk.
Does he have the Night of the Opera one? Is it the Night of the Opera one that he has?
I think so.
Let me see. There he is. Yeah, he has One Night at the Opera and Spookfest.
We watched One Night at the Opera. It has a whole big kerfluffle with a big
Darcy, please. Baby's the one that has the Twisted Wolf poster behind her.
Yeah.
And there's obviously the creepy clown.
You're right that it was in one of the alleyways.
Yeah.
Okay. The wolf. Yeah, kind of werewolf.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's her as well, I guess.
But it's think on the themes here, which is talking about deception, something that looks harmless.
Yeah, they are specifically like, this is a thing.
If we take this for the whole story about deception, the themes of deception, I think it's pretty interesting.
Because obviously it's about shape-shifting. Liam frowned at Drew. Before he could form a question, Drew went on. It's Mr. Button, Drew said. I think he might be something besides the man he pretends to be. He might have powers. Yeah, and again, William does. William is. Drew's words were so surprising that Liam leaned back as if the words themselves had ploughed into him and shoved him away from the table. Liam attempted to chuckle. Good one. But I thought you got what you wanted. He gave us a raise. Drew made a face. I'm not joking.
Mm-hmm.
He abruptly stood and started pacing back and forth on the redwood decking. Drew's feet pounded the boards and Liam felt the vibration ripple up his legs. All he did was give us a tiny raise, Drew said. You notice he didn't even mention what I said about having to buy your own clothes for work. That's because they're not uniforms, Liam said. They're regular white shirts and black pants. We can wear them anywhere. Why should he buy them? Drew stopped and frowned at Liam. Are you serious? Do you think I'd buy white button-down shirts and black slacks if I didn't have to have them for work?
And one obvious duo that I want to compare this to is Jake and Andrew. They're kind of like back and forth where, you know, Drew's pretty grumpy and Jake's pretty like trying to fix
good
stuff. Yeah. I think that's obvious. Like they're kind of all representing the same characters.
Here, can you move that? It's too warm. I've got a blanket on and it's heated up in here. It was freezing here right now. I'm sure Shock will put it to good use.
Put it on immediately. All of our friends, Cathures was like, I'm cold. And everyone was like, is Shock okay?
They were like, is Shock okay? Is Shock there? Where is she?
And I was like, I'm just resigned to my fate. It's just cold here.
Yeah, I'm never cold, so me being cold, I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. Who could tolerate this for 5 minutes? He wore shorts. He couldn't. Drew the point. He was a jeans and t-shirt guy. Liam actually didn't wear his black slacks outside of work either, but he wore the shorts. He couldn't have done that if they were uniform shorts. Besides, Drew went on, ever since we got the raise, nothing's gone right. He blew out air. Did I tell you I got a D on the physics test? Liam shook his head, wondering how Mr. Button and the raise could have anything to do with Drew's grades. He didn't ask the question, though. He was afraid to. Drew was stomping back and forth, his face reddening with each step. I got a D in calculus too, Drew said. Liam remained silent. He wasn't surprised by the grades. Drew was lazy. He did as little as possible to get by, and some classes required more than that. Then there's Rianne, Drew said. What about her? Liam asked. She dumped me. I thought we were double dating to the prom. Oh, we're still on for that. I'm taking Cecilia now. Of course you are, Liam said. Cecilia was one of the prettiest girls in the class. How did Drew do that, Liam wondered. That doesn't sound so bad. And Dad's on my case big time, Drew continued. For what? Liam didn't really care, but maybe if Drew got it all out of his system, they could get on with their work. One of my tyres blew the other night. I lost control and took out the old biddy's mailbox. The old biddy, Liam knew, was the widow who lived at the end of the street. Liam thought she was nice. Drew couldn't get past the fact she'd called the police one day when he'd sped through the neighbourhood and narrowly missed her cat. That's interesting as well, like the cat.
Mm-hmm.
When Mom and Dad gave me...
I'm not sure. This feels like it represents something. I'm not sure what.
No, I don't know what either.
Lost on this one. We've been, you know, like...
usually like spooky, creepy, like people like that are either like Charlie or Henry, but this doesn't seem to be either of those.
I don't know. It's Mr. Cupcake. He's up to no good. He's bothering everyone.
Yeah, he's pissed off literally everybody.
And writing is his passion, an investigation, but he's not. He doesn't do his job, and Mr. Cupcake doesn't do his job in FNAF 1 or FNAF 2 or anything either.
When Mom and Dad gave me the SUV, Dad said I had to take care of the insurance, Drew continued. It cost a lot, so I got the highest deductibles you can get. But now the damage is less than the deductible, so I have to pay for it all myself. I don't have that much, so I asked Dad to help. He won't do it. Says I need to learn responsibility.
That's what, just as a character note, that's what we see earlier in the story and why his dad probably is like, we need to save this for college. You know, it doesn't want him to pay for everything. He wants him to be independent. And,
and he also is a dangerous driver, so why would you buy my brand new car?
Yeah, that's a pretty, usual, I would say, parental trait where they're like, no, you gotta earn it yourself.
My usual is some people.
No.
My family didn't do that.
No, my family did.
My family were just like, yeah, you can have that thing. It's reasonable. Liam agreed. He didn't say so. We had a big fight, Drew went on. I told him I don't have time to work more than a job because of the work for the paper, and he said my priorities are screwed up. He said I'm going to be a starving reporter. I told him I didn't have to starve if he'd let me have my trust fund. He said there was a reason Gramps left the trust fund in his control until I turned 30. I accused him of wanting to steal the money from the fund. He got so pissed he took it out on Mom and Carly too. Now they're mad at me. Mom won't do my laundry. Carly keeps playing her stupid pop music at full volume. I can't concentrate to write. That's funny. Her stupid pop music. Carly's playing music. The like the puppet playing music. That's funny.
So I'll say as well. Let's see. We had a big fight. And his priorities are screwed up. So we think about this so it's pretty weird for Scott to be slanting writing in such a negative way, because Scott writes, obviously, and we know his Scott's son is a writer, and Scott supports him a lot in his endeavors.
Braden.
There's no way that Scott's true feeling...
Again, that's the thing. Like, people are always like, this is Scott. I'm like, Scott is extremely supportive of Braden. Like, Scott was like, encourages Braden to get involved with Scholastic, gets him a book, helps him, like, and then he's publishing his own stuff. You know, I'm just like...
But it's cute. He's made The Vengeful Spirit, which, as we said, I think it's Henry's son, a writer here. Again, this story is slanted against him, but I don't think that... Definitely
I wonder if Scott did the trust fund thing with his kids, though, where he was like, you can't have any of the FNAF money until you're, like, 30.
Maybe, but either way, I don't think...
Yeah,
that's another reason. That's another reason I don't think that this is a sincere, like,
no,
you know, oh, you're pursuing your stupid writing hobby.
No.
That doesn't sound like Scott or Scott's values.
Scott really supports people pursuing their dreams, even if they are crazy, like writing or game development or whatever.
So
like,
me, think about Scott. Like, and Scott here,
like Scott was in retail and he wanted to make a game. And that would have been a stupid decision, you know.
Yeah, these values are reversed here. Of Scott did indie game development and indie like creative pursuits. Like that obviously was really important to him, and his core values and stuff. So to make a story where the moral is like Drew focused on his stupid writing when he should have been really helping out the retail restaurant.
He should have been
wage,
supporting the pizza industry on his back. You know, it's like, no.
So I think that's another signal here, just from we know that what Scott's values about creativity and writing are that this story is a reverse, like a dark.
Yeah, like he made the fanverse to like help support people making things that are like not feasible.
That something's up with this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Poor Drew can't touch his inherited hundreds of thousands until he's the decrepit age of 30. So sad. Liam gave some thought to pretending to play a little violin. He liked the smallest violin. He decided not to. Instead, he said, "What does all this have to do with Mr. Button and shapeshifters?" Drew threw up his hands. Isn't it obvious?
Yes, I'm following you.
Liam
Drew.
slowly shook his head. He's sowing unrest,
That's right.
Drew said. That's what demons do.
Yes.
It's what skinwalkers do.
He's right.
And shapeshifters? I thought werewolves just like to rip people up. What do they care about unrest? Liam asked, fully aware of how stupid the whole conversation was. You're missing the point, Drew shouted.
Drew here sounds crazy and conspiratorial. Obviously, these are all his own screw-ups and his own beefs, and it can't have anything to do with Mr. Burton.
Yeah.
But, again, Drew's completely right. 100% I support him. He's right. William is causing all these problems.
Yeah.
It's all his fault.
What is the point? He asked quietly. Drew leaned forward and lowered his voice. I've been reading about unsolved crimes, you know.
We're getting right to the
victims of psychopathic serial killers who haven't been caught. And it has me wondering just what Mr. Button really is. Oh my god, I've been talking about psychopaths this whole time.
Just dead on.
And then they're specifically like, straight up.
He's like, I'm talking about mythical beasts, but what I'm really talking about is psychopathic serial killers.
Because again, it's that like wolf man thing. Darcy, why are you doing the crawl around? He keeps coming round, like climbing up, trying to walk towards the mic. Shock picks him up, puts him in a lap, he jumps down, and then he does it again like 2 minutes later as if we're not going to just do the same thing. He's like...
He's about his business.
Yeah. And it has me wondering just what Mr. Button really is. Liam shook his head. Drew ignored him and went on. Mr. Button thinks he can appease me with a little raise. As if $1 an hour can make everything okay. It's a drop in the bucket.
That's right.
Who can get ahead on $1 an hour raise? It's evil is what it is. And the weirdest thing is, right, just the absolute, like, for me it's so frustrating, like, Liam is poor. Liam has no money. Liam is struggling to survive. His friend is advocating for, like, money for him. Like, you shouldn't have to buy your own uniform.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to,
you should be able to get out of your town away from your family.
Yeah, your family are horrible. You should be able to get the car you want and get out of here. But he's like, no, you're being mean to the rich old man. You know, it's just society again. People are like, don't be mean to Elon Musk. He's so nice. And it's like, right. But yeah, it's evil is what it is. What's evil? Drew suddenly sat back down and pulled his chair over next to Liam's. He leaned in so close that Liam could smell Drew's breath. It reeked of the onions they'd put on the sandwiches they'd eaten before they came outside to work on the project. Evil is subterfuge, Drew said. Wrong pretending to be right. Bad disguised as good.
Hell yeah. Preach it, Drew.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Oh God.
Wrong pretending to be right. Bad disguised as good.
The level of deception. I am saying this. That FNAF, this is one of FNAF's main themes. There is so much trickery and
people just want to take it literally every time. And it's like, don't worry about this. This couldn't be anything bad. Like, literally a voiceover will say that and people will go, this is correct. Mr. Hippo will be like, maybe we shouldn't theorize about anything. And people are like, maybe we shouldn't theorize about anything. I'm like, I'm going to actually die.
I think Help Wanted in the DLC when you first come in are like, don't look,
it does
that, don't look behind the curtain. There's nothing to worry about. There's no extra hidden puzzles.
And then when the Halloween one gets released, it's like, this is just a DLC. It has no hidden anything to do with anything, like, basically. And you're like, bad disguised is good. Drew tapped his chin, and Liam saw that Drew's cuticles were chewed raw. That's anxiety. I'm like, look at my poor fingers. They're so messed up. He also suddenly noticed the dark circles under Drew's eyes.
Drew is a mess, and we're here for it.
I know, I'm like, relates. Like, bisexual Drew mess.
Yeah.
Okay, Liam said for lack of anything better to say. Drew backed up and pointed at his laptop. I just started thinking about how there's so much in the world that we can't see.
Yes.
So many things going on right in front of us that are invisible. He waved his hands. Cell phones, signals, radio waves, microscopic bacteria and viruses.
That's right.
And again, this is meant to sound like a conspiracy theorist.
Because...
But he said there are forces we can't perceive. In the FNAF world, there are.
Yeah.
Emotional energy is a thing. It's a thing that exists. It's the core energy of the whole series.
Also radio waves. That's the illusion discs.
Yeah. There are like 50 different technologies in FNAF that all depend on invisible stuff in the world. So as much as in our world this might sound like the prelude to like some kind of conspiracy rant, it's literally accurate to the FNAF world.
And to me, again, this loops in so tightly to... Like, there are two characters, right, in the Frights that are male twin characters with a female twin, right? And that's Pickle and Gordon. Pickle from The Breaking Wheel and Gordon from Felix the Shark. And both of them, Gordon is a conspiracy theorist who can't get along with other people because he has these wild conspiracies. He also thinks his boss is a robot. Pickle also thinks that his teacher is a robot. This kind of paranoid mindset that the vengeful spirit, which is Henry's son, has, is part of why... even without his memories, he's not tricked. It's a basic part of his personality where he's investigative, suspicious, paranoid, conspiracy-oriented.
Yeah, it's just his nature is like that. Like, where Susie is trusting and kind, he's suspicious and conspiratorial and a bit angry.
Yeah. Which is why William's like, made a mistake. He made a mistake with this kid.
This kid's the worst. I shouldn't have done that. Drew pointed at the computer. Did you know scientists find about 18,000 new species of plants and animals a year? Every year. He slapped the tabletop and the soda cans they'd sat next to their computers jumped.
Oh, and my other favorite thing about this character trait is that when you think that Sammy is the vengeful spirit, you feel like a super crazy conspiracy theorist.
Scott makes you live the conspiracy life. And everybody's like, Cathures and Shockbunt are clearly insane. They think Sammy exists or whatever. And I'm like...
The way I found out about it was originally through a very weird system of counting numbers and puzzles that was truly insane. And then, like, looking at, like, the book evidence, that one's easier, at least. Like, he just names the character Sam. Like, Scott doesn't care. Scott just names this character Drew, but it's easy. But so finding at the core little middle of it, a little guy who is also a conspiracy theorist surrounded by, like, weird charts and little red theory string dots, I'm like, thank you for this character, Scott.
For me. My experience with Sammy was, like, Shock had the idea, and I was like, I was like, nah, I hate this. I was like, we only see Sammy once, and that's in the novels. And I was like, and there's no evidence whatsoever that he's anywhere else. And at that point, that was the case. That was the way I felt about it. And then we read the stories. And then we got to the stories where it was like, this is clearly, like, there's no one else this character could be. Like, there just isn't. There just isn't anybody else that it could be. And you read it and you go, okay, I think maybe Sammy is here. Like, he's somewhere.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Your journey.
It's such a good idea, though. Like, it's such a... Stop. You can hear this if you play with... This is the mic sitting on a towel, so if you hear scuff, 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 it's because Shock can't not touch it. But yeah, like... Yeah, I think for me it was when I read, like, Breaking Wheel, I was just like, okay, whatever. It's true. It has to be true. And we've had other, like, friends that have gone through the cycle of grief as well, where you're like, this isn't real, this is a bit silly, and then you read the stories and you go, oh, God. And that's, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, he smacks the desk. He's also very aggressive, like, very aggressive. Like you get the idea that, like, Liam's very defeated and kind of passive, but Drew is just, like, whacks things. Like, he's, like, smacks the table, crashes his car. Liam was having trouble following Drew's logic. He waited to see if it would come together, and it did. Sort of. That's you. Waited to see if the logic would come together, and it did. Sort of.
Gotta go with my gut. My theory gut.
With all that unknown stuff in the world, Drew said, who's to say some of the people we think are people aren't actually people at all?
Oh, you mean like where my rambles come together or not? Yeah, that's... Yeah, I know. Yeah. I relate to him there.
And many people actually people at all? You mean... I mean, what if people like Mr. Button, all the nicey nicers out there who want everyone to think they're so normal and good are actually something else?
Everyone that's nice is on the naughty list.
A lot of people that are nice are on the naughty list, as far as I'm concerned. There are some people who are nice who are just genuinely a sweet person. A lot of them have had, like, rough lives. And then there are people who are nice, and it's calculated nice, and I'm like, I see you.
Nice is different from good.
Yeah. It's hard to be good every day. Liam decided he had to get the train back on the tracks. Okay, he said, we can go with shapeshifters. It'll be unique. I'm sure no one else will go that route. He opened his own laptop. How do you want to do this? Drew's face, which had been taut and flushed with passion, went slack. The red faded from his cheeks. He picked up his soda and took a sip, then said, well, let's do it the usual way. You research, I write. Liam nodded, and then it was like Drew's rant had never happened. They began knocking around ideas about how to approach their presentation while the sparrows continued to chirp in the bushes. The birds are dead, Drew.
I love Drew's characterization here. I love everything about this paragraph. I love everything that's happening. It's the best.
You're so weird. It's so weird that this story was like your favourite. I read it and I was like, this is pretty good, and Shock was like obsessed.
So good.
Like, it takes a lot to get Shock to draw a picture. Like, Shock's a really talented artist, does not draw. Like, never draws. Draws, like, little characters from, like, little groups that we're in, but never can never sit down and be like, I need to draw this thing and draw it. It's very infrequent. It's beautiful when it happens. And this one, she sat down and actually drew things, and I was like, wow, you must really love this story.
I do really love it.
For the next few days, things seemed to return to normal. Just the Pizza's business picked up again. Liam and Drew worked their usual shifts. Liam was grateful for the bit of extra money he got from the raise. It wasn't enough to cover all the expenses he had upcoming, but it was something. See? He did like the raise. He did. He was like, no, and then he's like,
it isn't.
He's like, it's not enough. Yeah. Like exactly what Drew said.
Scott knows intimately, like, what it's like to work for these low-paying positions, to have responsibilities and things he needs, not just like, you know,
like he had kids to look after, and that was why he was doing it.
He was to be like, paid nothing for, like, thankless work,
grueling work. Like, I mean, I work in like an office role, and I'm like, the people who are in retail should be getting more money than me. It's a horrible job. 100% I would be happy to see retail people get more money than me. I'm like, no problem with that, because it's nasty and I would not do it. It's a fucking horrible job. Let's see. Yeah, for this, Liam didn't think much about it until Drew's next article came out. What good is $20 was the headline of Drew's next article, explaining that part-time workers don't get many hours each week. Drew examined the tax and social security deductions taken from wages and concluded that the extra $24 he got each week after Mr. Button's raise amounted to just $20 net per week. Yeah, and again, he's right. That isn't a big raise. It doesn't make a difference. Like, I've had like pound raises, and I'm like, this didn't change anything. You know, the tax eats this. You know what I mean? Like, that's 80 lousy bucks per month, Drew wrote. All over the country, service industry workers are treated like peasants, and they're supposed to be grateful when they receive more crumbs than usual. Does a benevolent smile and a pair of flashy suspenders make up for that kind of parsimony? Yeah. Again, Scott knows this. Scott worked at Dollar General.
Yep.
You know, sometimes you're like at work and you're like, man, I wish I had more money. And they're like, pizza party. We've bought everyone pizza. Don't you forget all your like wage gripes? And people are like, no, I would still like to be paid more money.
It's so funny that Drew is like, such a kind of a villainous character here when he's like, all over the country, service industry workers are treated like peasants, and they're supposed to be grateful
people
when
like
they
Drew is
crumbs.
evil.
Yeah.
Drew is the evil character here. I'm like, Liam was sure Drew was particularly proud of that last line. He was also probably pretty pleased with himself about the headline of his next article too. It was splashed across the front of the school paper a week later. We see you, Mr. Button, the headline read.
William would be so annoyed. so annoyed.
He does not want attention on any of his stuff either. He would be like, I'm going to get rid of that kid.
Drew, what do you do if you've already gotten rid of that kid and he's still kicking around? That's the vengeful spirit problem.
The headline read, Drew really worked to rile up his audience in that article. We need to make sure Mr. Button knows that we know the truth. Everyone let him know. We see the truth, Mr. Button. You can't smile your way out of your cruelty. And again, William, you know, like, you can't smile your way out of your cruelty. I see who you are.
Yep.
Like, all of that stuff is really important.
He was affable and normal. He was an affable, normal businessman.
Yeah. The evening that article was put... And again, like, for me, like, Liam is such a tragic character in this, because if he represents Mike, it means that Mike had tons of times where he was like, maybe he's doing something, and then kind of, like, talked himself out of it.
Or Crying Child, you know, that kind
of
child.
Yeah, or Crying Child, yeah.
Crying
Anybody.
Child, Andrew Pear.
Yeah, just anything where he, like, talked himself out of his gut feelings. The evening the article was published, Liam didn't see Drew much. When Liam was out front in the dining room, Drew was in the back, either in the kitchen or in the storeroom. And when Liam was in the back, Drew was out front. A couple of times Liam couldn't find Drew at all. That was when Mr. Button was locked in his office. This is important as well. Drew's missing, Mr. Button's in his office. Not long before closing, Liam was rushing past Mr. Button's office carrying a tray of dirty dishes, and something made him stop at the closed door. He paused near the door jamb and listened. Liam had never thought much about the fact that Mr. Button often retreated to his office and locked the door. The man had a right to privacy. But now, after Drew's articles and the weirdness in the restroom, Liam wondered what Mr. Button was doing that required a locked door. Liam cocked his head and leaned it towards the door. He heard nothing, not a single sound. Liam shook his head, inwardly scolding himself for being nosy. He was just letting Drew's attitude of Mr. Button get to him. He shifted the tray he held and strode away towards the kitchen. Mr. Button didn't come out of his office until just before Liam and Drew were getting ready to leave the restaurant.
Okay, and I just want to note here for some things that happened later, which I hadn't noticed the timeline on this, but this note specifically, there are times in the kitchen where Drew is gone completely, and when he can't find Drew,
Mr. Button's in his office.
Office is locked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mr. Button's office is locked.
So he doesn't know who's in there. He goes there to see if he can hear any sounds or anything, but he can't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I had never noticed this the first time we read this either, this part. It's given additional sinisterness when you see what happens later on.
Yep.
But yeah, his office being locked. And again, why? Like, he's the manager. He's the manager. Like, he should be managing the business, but he's in this office, like, forever.
When I did work in kitchens and things, and our managers never had their door locked.
everywhere I've
they
ever
were
walked.
sometimes in the
Yeah,
office
yeah,
and
you
they
might
were
be doing
busy.
that, like I like putting like timesheets or like like schedules together or whatever.
But the door was always open.
Yeah, because you might need to come in and say there's an emergency.
It wasn't even locked. Like even if there was a private talk that was happening with a manager and an
Yeah.
employee that was serious, the door wasn't locked.
No, I mean same where we work now. Like there's offices like where you can go and have a HR meeting or whatever, but you can just walk in. You know,
Nobody
it's
locks
not no one
doors.
locks doors.
That's very
It's
unusual.
suspicious, extremely suspicious in a business like area or whatever. Even in the hospital, they don't shut the doors.
No.
Like literally, like in the hospital, like the doors are always open. You can walk in. And he didn't come out until just before they were getting ready to leave the restaurant, so he was in there all night.
Yeah.
As they were heading towards the back door, Mr. Button appeared suddenly, so suddenly that Liam gasped audibly. Embarrassed by his reaction, Liam gave Mr. Button a sheepish grin. "Hey, Mr. B," he said, "we're taking off." Mr. Button gave Liam a curt nod. He didn't speak. Liam thought Mr. Button looked awful. He seemed to be shrivelling up right before Liam's eyes. Drew opened the pizzeria's back door and Mr. Button's gaze shifted to watch him. As soon as Mr. Button focused on Drew, Mr. Button's face tightened. For just an instant, Mr. Button's friendly eyes went cold. A muscle below his left eye twitched once. And then Mr. Button wiped his face and turned away.
This is an important
muscle twitches or a William thing?
Yeah, if you pull up the movie novel, specifically, I think I pointed this out on Blue Sky before, but
I mentioned it. I've posted about it as well, where he's got the jaw thing because Mike has the same thing. Oh, let's see. Oh, right. Hold on, let me find it. I know. I don't have anything like particularly questionable or anything. I just have a bunch of romance novels on here that I'm like people probably don't want to see. Let me see. Movie novel. Where are you? Movie novel. See if you can see it. So many FNAF things, man.
Do you have?
I definitely do because I search it all the time. There it is. There
it is. Yeah.
I just couldn't see it for. I think I've seen that cover so much everywhere that it doesn't actually mean anything. Ugh, it's so small on the screen. Hold on, I'll do this.
And you can search probably.
Yeah, I'll search
Twitch.
Vanessa's jaw twitches as well. That's funny. So Mike, William, and Vanessa. Yeah. So like when he's talking to him, I'll do this. This is the best way to show it because of my crazy monitors. Oh, can I not zoom in on this? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure there was one.
Yeah, but that's Raglan.
Yeah.
That's when Mike is like, he's like, "Don't kill people, Mike," or whatever. I forgot there was a Jeff in the movie as well. Yeah, that's the twitches though.
It was try I. Or let's see. Muscle maybe? I don't know. There's something.
As far as I'm aware, William only has a jaw twitch in this novel.
Okay.
Because Mike has the same thing. But yeah, it's that anger thing, and it is something that we see from these ones. Let's see, yeah. And then Mr. Button wiped his face and turned away. Liam ignored the shiver that rippled down his spine. He'd never seen Mr. Button show anger like that. Seeing the frosty, barely-contained ire under Mr. Button's usual sweet expression was like looking at the real face behind a mask. It was unnerving. Liam forced himself to shake off his uneasiness as he followed Drew out of the building. And again, like if you're a nice person, you don't harbour a vast well of rage like this necessarily, like towards someone.
Now we understand it. Like
it's
obviously
totally fine that it's his business is being affected.
Fine reading of this story, you know, like obviously, like you can also see both sides of the thing where, you know, obviously you would be a little bit mad if somebody was constantly writing
I'm not a nice person
about
though.
you. Yeah.
Like I would just
Or
be
anybody,
like,
anybody.
yeah,
would be
but
mad.
I mean, like he's portrayed as this endlessly patient, nice man, but that doesn't jive with someone who's carrying like this massive anger underneath. If it's Scott, Scott has a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Like we've seen his general rants.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's just interesting that it implies he's a different type of character than we thought. No matter what else happens in this, for me, his character is different than we can expect. It's fine that he's angry, but it tells me something is different about his personality than we are told. Because anger management is part of like staying calm and reasonable. Like you don't get angry. Do you ever feel like this? Like I'm gonna explode with anger, and then someone's like, and yet you're being nice to someone. Like not to that degree.
No, no, probably not.
Yeah. Like I do. I feel like that all the time. Like I feel like that when I drop a piece of paper, I'm like, I'm gonna kill this piece of paper. I'm gonna like tear it to pieces. But that's me. I'm always angry. Yeah, so behind the mask, and again the mask thing, yeah. Liam forced himself to shake off his uneasiness as he followed.
The usual
Drew
expression was look at the real face behind a mask. Yeah, we see that, like where like he looks out at people out of the spring body mask. And
yeah, and we see it like plenty of times. Yeah, with Dave and yeah, everything like that. From that point on, the headlines got worse and worse. Mr. Button cuts corners. Pizza profits or personal respect? Just a pizza or just a rip-off? Drew started writing about the subpar ingredients used in Mr. Button's pizzas. I do like Drew, like his defiance in the face of everything is just, yeah, he's like, I don't care. He's like, you can't threaten me. Drew started writing about the subpar ingredients used in Mr. Button's pizzas. He levelled food safety food safety accusations. He has no lights in his kitchen.
Yeah.
This brought an inspector to the pizzeria, but just a pizza passed inspection easily. It should not have.
We're not sure why. FNAF seems to be pretty like shady as far as like the pizza stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Do they bribe inspectors?
Probably.
I don't know.
That was when Liam confronted his friend. What's wrong with you? Liam snapped at Drew when they left the restaurant near midnight in the middle of the week. You know Mr. Button runs a clean place. Why did you write what you wrote? Drew gave Liam a condescending look of pity, as if Liam was far too young and naive to understand the nuances of the subject. It's called accountability, Drew said. The only way to draw out the enemy is to put him under pressure. What's that supposed to mean? Drew glanced up at the moonlit sky. Werewolves are triggered by the full moon. Serial killers are triggered by an inner urge or something from their past. Mr. Button has a trigger too. I'm going to find out what it is. I'm going to be his full moon.
He's like, yeah, show me your dark side.
Yeah.
He's like, show me your worst.
Yeah, and
he's
for
like,
William,
get mad.
I think for William, like the trigger is calling him stupid.
Yeah.
Stupidity. Because, and if we go to like the what we found thing, he has the whole thing about being called stupid and worthless and whatever.
But in the movie,
and in the movie, he absolutely loses it when people are like, "That's two things." He's like, "I will end you right now." Like it's the big trigger for him. Liam's mouth dropped open as Drew sauntered towards his SUV. One of the SUV's headlights was busted and the front fender was dented. Clearly, Drew hadn't come up with the money to get repairs done.
He said he didn't have the money for it. Yeah. That's what he said earlier.
Yeah, he's like, I don't have that money. Drew also had yet another girlfriend. Drew, man, just get a boyfriend.
Serial womanizer characterization is really funny too. Like he's just going through them. The most prettiest and popular girls in the school.
A lovely redhead named Zoe was now going to be Drew's prom date if she lasted that long. Liam could barely stomach reading Drew's expose series, although calling it an expose was like calling a burger haute cuisine. The articles were nothing but a smear campaign, but because Drew was the head of the paper, no one was calling him on what he was doing. In fact, people were starting to get into it. Mr. Button's past revealed. Child died in Mr. Button's last restaurant.
Big stuff, right? Yeah. That's this starts to get a bit more serious, right?
Yep.
The previous, we saw a bit previously where there's a bit of blood. Obviously just a little like he's not paying us enough, but Starts to get
he's
serious.
like, the child died in Mr. Button's last restaurant was the headline for an article that reported Mr. Button, under a different name, covered up the death of a child. Mr. Button gets away with assault was the headline that accused Mr. Button of attacking an unnamed employee who claimed the old man slapped her after her shift. This again, like, we don't know if that happened.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
He just knows there's
We know
claims
there are female employees.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the last article that triggered the protests. Up until the assault accusation, the impact of Drew's articles hadn't been catastrophic. Yes, there had been a steady deterioration of customers at Just a Pizza. However, a relatively well-travelled scenic route ran through town and Just a Pizza continued to get tourist trade. Mr. Button was now relying on that business to stay afloat. The protests, however, took away those customers too. I don't understand, Mr. Button said late on a Friday afternoon as he peered around from behind a vintage bronze and cherry coat rack near the big picture window at the front of the pizzeria. Mr. Button's usual smile had been replaced with a confused purse of the lips and puzzled frown. It made Liam want to hug the old guy and offer to get him a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
Liam was polishing a nearby sideboard. He'd just polished it the day before, but there wasn't anything else to do today.
Don't we all just want to give William a big old hug and give him a cup of tea for, it's so sad that sad things have happened to William all the time.
Yeah.
People would not want to go to his restaurant. Why would that be?
Rob and Tracy were in the back taking an unnecessary inventory. Deb had already gone home. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She'd claimed she had a doctor's appointment, but Liam was pretty sure she left so Mr. Button wouldn't have to pay her or ask her to leave. Was it Deb? Was it Deb that got hit? Is what I'm saying.
Oh.
You know, it says an employee gets slapped.
Oh.
Deb's away here.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So again, Liam's situation of the thing is slanted. So, right. So Deb is avoiding work here. And Liam says, I think it's because we're not making very much money. So
yeah,
he just she's trying to help out the business. And that's why she's absent suddenly.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
For me, I was just immediately like, let's look at these female employees. And immediately it's like, Deb is gone.
Yeah.
Like, that shouldn't actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we shouldn't, like, as a writer, like, why would you put who was there? It doesn't matter. But they've said Deb is away. She's got a doctor's appointment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A doctor's appointment as well. She has to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. After an assault's been reported.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Or ask her to leave. Liam understood Mr. Button's bafflement. He looked out through the picture window and shook his head at the spectacle unfolding in front of the pizzeria. Outside, several dozen people were marching back and forth on the narrow cracked sidewalk in front of Just a Pizza. They all carried professionally printed protest signs. There were 3 different signs: Morals Before Money, Mr. Button, Go Away, and Boycott Just a Pizza. All the signs were bright yellow with black writing, so bold that looking at it felt jarring. The small crowd was boisterous. People waved the signs back and forth and up and down as they chanted, "Button gone, Button gone." Liam thought the chant was cheesy, but more than that, it was cruel. So again, like, we also know Freddy's had deteriorating custom. Like, that was a thing that happened at Freddy's.
Mm-hmm.
And it closed as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is just, again, it's a mirror of that as well. Like, this deteriorating custom at a pizza place. Liam couldn't believe it when he saw some of his sweet white-haired neighbours in the crowd. He spotted Mrs. Thompson, the short round woman who was always baking Liam pies. He would never have thought she had a mean bone in her body, but there she was, shaking a fist towards the pizzeria as her husband, a usually placid guy whose most vigorous activity was the occasional game of croquet, swung his sign back and forth so vehemently that people had to jump out of the way. Beyond the Thompsons, Liam's old second grade teacher, a sweet skinny lady who collected butterfly figurines.
Oh, thin and butterfly stuff.
And volunteered at the local animal shelter.
Oh, that sounds Charlotte. That sounds puppetish for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
held her sign high as she chanted so loudly her cartoony voice could be heard above everyone around her. And there were others. The town was small enough that most of its residents were familiar to Liam. He wouldn't have imagined that any of them could have done what they were currently doing, but they were. Under the bright mid-afternoon sun, the easygoing townspeople had turned into righteous protesters radiating indignation and outrage. Liam stopped polishing the old mahogany sideboard. He stepped over next to Mr. Button and glared out at the protesters as he patted Mr. Button on the shoulder. "It'll all blow over, Mr. B," Liam said. "You'll see." Mr. Button didn't look at Liam. The old man's gaze was locked on the protest signs. A muscle in Mr. Button's jaw bulged. There's the straight
Maybe
up.
that was the one, the bulged.
It is. It's like, yeah, let's see. I'll check.
I knew there was one that was like word for word, like. Oh, yeah.
I told you it's his jaw.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, see, like, this is the second time.
That's it. That's the muscle twitch to the corner of the eye. There it is. It's both things. I knew it. Right?
Well.
A muscle twitch to the corner of Raglan's eye.
Yes, and the jaw bulge that I was talking about. Yeah.
There it is. I was so.
Yeah,
sure
and again,
look
at the sentiment in this as well.
Mhm.
Where is it? Hold on. I hate this. Please just zoom the fuck in. I hate computers. I work in IT and no one
Make the
hates.
corner larger.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
The whole thing resizes when it does that look, and then it shrinks way down here.
There you go.
Yeah, it's so annoying though. Oh my god.
Sure.
There. This is what I was talking about
Mm-hmm.
with the jaw bulge.
Earlier we had the muscle in the corner, or the muscle twitched in the eye. That was earlier, and then now the jaw bulging.
Yeah, a muscle in Mr. Button's jaw bulge. Liam didn't know what else to do, so he turned away and returned to his polishing. A muscle twitched at the corner of Raglan's eye. The right side of his jaw bulged briefly. That's what it feels like to be messed with, Mike thought.
That's when he's pretending to be normal. That's what he does. Also,
yeah, this is from the novel. It says, Mike waited, he suspected Raglan was still toying with him. All you'd have to do is keep the place tidy, Raglan finally said, and keep people out. That's two things, Mike said.
It's the exact thing that Cathures said was
a muscle twitched to the corner of Raglan's eye, the right side of his jaw bulged briefly. That's what it feels like to be messed with, Mike thought. Deal with it.
Yeah. I will also say the Thompsons, since it says Mrs. Thompson is a round woman that likes to bake.
Yeah, Susan, not Susan, Mrs. Emily sort of vibes, like, yeah.
Henry's wife, Pickle's mom is they like round.
I just call her Susan because we had to pick a name in my fic, and I picked Susan arbitrarily. That
likes
was
to bake.
Yeah.
We see that round figure who likes, and she's the mother of like a male and female twin in that story. We see that, and I think she's rounder and stuff in Blackbird too, but I think she's a rounder woman that likes to bake. That's Henry's type. I don't know. Yeah. So
he likes round affable people.
Well, so and then probably I guess so that might be an illusion. So I think this paragraph, some of them again, like I said, we get the whole story and it's easier, and sometimes they're just characters that show up really quick, and then we kind of have to make a quick. Maybe they mean something, maybe they don't, but maybe Henry and his wife there, and maybe the puppet there. The puppet we see volunteers a lot and works with.
Yeah, likes kids, likes dogs for some reason.
So
Liam was asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow that night. Being around all the controversy all day had Liam wiped out. He was relieved to close his eyes and forget about everything, but he wasn't able to forget, not even in his sleep. Liam's alarm goes off early. It's a Saturday morning. He needs to get ready for work. Wiping his eyes, he shuffles to his closet to get a fresh white shirt. Liam ironed the shirt the night before. Mr. Button insists on clean pressed work shirts. Opening the closet door, Liam's still half asleep as he reaches for the shirt, but as he pulls the shirt for the hanger, his eyes spring open. He cries out and stumbles backward. Mr. Button is standing in Liam's closet, holding a whole pile of white shirts. The stack of shirts reaches right up to Mr. Button's chin. Mr. Button is beaming. His grin is wide and his eyes are even wider. In a trick of the light for the closet's overhead bulb, Mr. Button's blue eyes have faded to white. They shine in an otherworldly glow.
Is that
It's purple guy basically as well.
Yeah.
Like the weird glowing eyes and the white. Yeah.
Yeah. Also Springtrap's eyes.
Yeah, Springtrap's eyes are white, but also like this is like as well. And like human eyes don't do this.
Yeah.
When Mr. Button steps forward, Liam turns to run. He trips over his shoes and flails. Liam thrashed in the sheets. He sat up, sweat trickling down his back between his shoulder blades. He looked towards his closed closet door. William in the closet. It was just a dream, he reassured himself. More like a nightmare, he mumbled. He lay back onto his pillow, but it was a long time before he fell back to sleep.
Reminds us of FNAF 4, right? Foxy in the closet. And...
Also, again, just to like step back from this, from a writer perspective, you don't put a dream sequence in for no reason. You just don't. Like, usually there's some overarching narrative, like, angle you take towards it. You know what I mean? Like, why would you put a dream sequence in here? Something that happened there is, like, important. The image we get there is important, whether it's important in, like, a meta sense or in the sense that Liam's subconscious is trying to tell him something. Because again, like it's like one thing, like in real life we can have dreams about nonsense, but in books things are trimmed and edited, like they have a reason to be there.
Also in Didophobia, Rory has like a normal day that's pretty fine where he eats, he thinks like about his family, he's like won't go to school today, but and then at night like he has horrible things happen and then he kind of forgets as it becomes daytime. We see this kind of like, I think also William's mask comes off and like what he's doing to people, like
Yeah.
the nightmares and stuff. For sure. Like even people who like and trust William and maybe
Yeah,
like
they
and
start
trust
to
him during
doubt
the
it.
daytime. Yeah.
And I think the kids doubt it more when someone's a catalyst for it, when there's someone else that like raises the question.
Mm-hmm.
The last place Drew wanted to go was home. Things between him and his dad hadn't gotten any better, and family dinners had turned into torture sessions of scolding and judgment. Drew was sick of it.
Henry and Sammy
So
arguing.
he'd started the habit after the sun went down, and when he could sneak into his house, grab some leftovers, and disappear into his increasingly filthy room without being seen. Today, Drew headed down Main Street. He wanted to see the growing protest outside Just a Pizza. He's like, I want to see my handiwork.
Good.
4 days in, the crowd was so massive that it spilled out into the street. Drew had to slow as he drove past. A couple of the protesters spotted Drew and waved. They're like, hey, Drew. One of them, Mrs. Pritchard, the hardware store's owner's wife, called out, keep up the good work, Drew. Mrs. Pritchard's eyes were lit up with excitement as she brandished her protest sign towards the pizzeria. Several others in the crowd noticed Drew and called out his name. He grinned and waved back to the protesters. They cheered and waved their signs. Drew drove on. Warmth rushed through his body as he found himself sitting up straighter behind the wheel. The attention felt amazing. It was like the town's hero.
Aww.
He was Batman with a pen, swooping in and exposing Main Street. See the underbelly.
It's so
he's a journalist.
funny
He's like a detective. He's like, I'm a detective, like Batman.
I know. It's so funny that he compares himself to Batman here. I love the vengeful spirit Batman. Like he's like, I'm like Batman. I'm like, yeah.
He's like, I'm dispensing justice.
Yeah.
Drew turned on his radio as he headed to the gas station. He pounded his palm on the steering wheel. The power of the grunge rocks beat coursing through his veins.
Oh, yeah.
But despite the crowd's attention, despite his work, he could only afford 1/3 of a tank of gas. That pissed him off. How dare his dad refuse to help his own son, and how dare his dad not see the value of what Drew did with his writing? His dad kept blabbing about getting to the top of the corporate ladder. That's where the money is, son, not in endless scribbling. His dad had said at the last dinner Drew had endured. Yeah, and he stopped going to dinner because of that. Like, that obviously, like, wounded him as well. You know what I mean? No, Drew thought, the money is in your accounts and in my trust fund, and you just won't let me have it. Men like Drew's dad, like Mr. Button, were the dregs of society. They acted all important and amiable, but under that friendly exterior, they were selfish monsters.
And we see here that Drew's like conflates Mr. Burton and his frustration with his dad and money with his frustration with it seems like he probably can't take it out on his dad, right?
Yeah.
Like his dad is not a figure that he's able to strike out against.
His dad holds like control via money over him ultimately.
Yeah. And so just from a characterization standpoint on this book, he seems to be taking it out on Mr. Burton.
Yeah. Drew went inside the gas station to pay. Pete, the 20-something prematurely balding clerk at the register, looked up and saw
Prematurely
him.
balding. All right, so
He's
this character
20 and he's balding. That's so unfortunate. My friend's brother, he balded at 20 as well.
So Pete, here's a name you've heard before, and Step Closer was the character that was the older brother that was cursed by Foxy. He had a younger brother named Chuck the Chump, like Cece, and their father was Bill. And so this is the character that I think he's very brief here, but this is who I think represents Mike, because his relationship here with Drew is also very what we see with Mike and Sam relationships, which is they're actually best friends. They're really cool with each other. They get along for whatever reason. So
yeah.
Lee, I think Crying Child and Sam have like a more strained, you see Jake and Andrew's relationship.
Yeah, they've got an age gap as well, like to a degree probably. Like they've got like in terms of like their experience, like Crying Child died ages ago in terms of stuff.
Oh, I see what you mean. But technically, I think
they're close in age, but in terms of age, in terms of when they die, it's very different. I think
maybe so.
Like, I don't know.
But overall, I think the two of them have some conflict and difference of like outlook and what they're doing, and But I think Mike has a little bit of an attitude problem, and Sam also has a bit of an attitude problem, and together instead they're just like, yo, and it just works out. So I don't know.
Also, if there's little thumps on the audio, it's enthusiastic shock thumping the table. I have to keep being like, stop, 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 but she keeps doing it, so it's fine. It's just in case anybody's like, what's the bumps? It's shock. Where is it? Drew, my man. Pete leaned over the old wood counter, crammed with candy, gum, and jerky. He held up a hand, Pam out. Well, give me 5. Oh, gum as well. Yeah, like Mike's like, like task, quit chewing gum. Drew stepped forward and slapped Pete's big palm with his own. Drew tried to breathe shallowly. Pete smelled a little sour.
See, there again, like the Mike's, like he got fired for odor in FNAF 1 and FNAF 2.
Not even the aroma of the hot dogs and the nearby food warmer could mask the odor. Odor, literally is the word odor here.
Yeah, oh, that's right, fired for odor. Yeah, you're right, they used it exactly.
Rockin' article series you've been doing, Pete said as he accepted the $20 bill Drew handed him. Everyone's talking about it. It's righteous stuff.
Yeah, kind of the teenage speak there. Or even
Thanks,
he's 20,
Drew
but
said.
he's like, whoa, dude.
A middle-aged couple came down one of the cramped aisles and approached the counter carrying a 6-pack of root beer and 2 bags of chips. Pete motioned them over. Hey, meet the guy who's been writing those articles, Pete said. The woman, her greying brown hair tucked behind unusually tiny ears, looked towards Drew and flashed a big yellow-toothed smile. Oh, you're the one. Your articles are fascinating. I had no idea we had such a villain in our midst. I was just saying to Ralph. Oh my God, it's Ralph. I didn't know Ralph was in this.
Star-studded.
Wasn't I, Ralph? That we have an actual conspiracy in our town. That Mr. Button is a villain for sure. I can't wait to read more. Ralph nodded. Good stuff. He said to Drew. He's like, I know William's evil. He's like, I figured it out now. Oh my God, Ralph. I forgot all about that. Take that, Drew thought. Images of his dad and Mr. Button filling in his mind.
Henry and William both. He's like, you guys can both spin on it.
Yeah. His scribblings weren't a waste of time after all. People were loving his articles. They were getting into his accusations. Everywhere Drew went, the reception was the same. Drew was becoming a local celebrity, and his fans wanted more. So he gave it to them. Who is Mr. Button? Drew's next headline read. He interviewed several people around town. I think he lived in a bunch of other towns before he moved here. Not sure why he moved around so much, one guy said. Bit of a loner. But he's always nice when you speak to him. Also, we know, timeline-wise, there was a time period that's unaccounted for where William split. William left. Left town. And we don't really know where he went at that point.
Yeah.
Like the pizzeria shut down. William left and then became a local entrepreneur later that created sister location. There was a time period where he was transient somehow, potentially just him and Mike, because I think at that point, Crying Child was gone, Elizabeth was dead.
His wife had divorced him.
Because
Vanessa said she testified at the divorce.
Yeah, so so then he split later on. So there was a time where it was just him and Mike, and potentially they were moving from town to town, and they would not have been living well because I don't think he had any money at that point. And we don't actually know where he got all the money to invest in sister location either at that point. But yeah, just randomly, this accusation of moving from town to town to town could also have been something that William did at one point. And could he have been a Mr. Button in a town? You know, like he's a mall cop in Silver Eyes and stuff.
He uses names.
Yeah.
I think that when you're reading the story for the first time, maybe that is one of the questions that's supposed to be in the back of your mind. Like, is Mr. Burton actually
William Afton? Yeah.
I don't think he is, but
no, he's not. But I think it's an echo of what actually happened. I think. What is all that niceness hiding? He dug up some psychologist articles about how excessive cheerfulness or niceness often was a subterfuge hiding psychopathic personalities. We literally see it in Steve Raglan.
And with just how he was before 1985.
Yeah, I mean, but we don't get an in-action kind of view of him then. We just hear other people's accounts, but we see it in the movie where he's like, hi, Mike, That theme ran through Drew's next few articles, and by the time Drew was done with them, he was convinced he'd uncovered a real monster hidden in his little town. If he'd had to tell the truth, Drew would have been forced to admit that he started his series on Mr. Button primarily to punish the guy for being a stingy boss. But now it was all for real. Mr. Button was hiding something. Drew had unearthed true evil in the heart of his town. He was his town's white knight. Aww.
Yeah.
It was a grey, drizzly day.
It's as well, we see the vengeful spirit comes across a lot of times as a mean, angry, like kind of disturbing, almost villainous character. But we see, you know, he sees himself as a little bit of a hero or an
Yeah, he
anti-hero.
wants to be a hero.
Yeah. And I think he is. I believe in him.
You're like a vengeful spirit. Like if vengeful spirit has one fan, like you know that stupid thing.
Yeah, it's me.
It was a grey drizzly day when the junior class had its history fair, but that didn't put a damper on the events. The high school gym was packed with booths, and most of the town had turned out to wander past them. The gym was a chaos of presenting speakers and applauding observers. Several booths were using music or drums as a backdrop to their presentations. The rhythms and melodies clashed with one another. Just a random aside, but see these science fair things that you like, do those actually happen in America?
Yes.
Like, you actually have science fairs?
Yes.
It's not just something that's in movies.
No, we have science fairs.
That makes sense.
I had science fairs.
See, we don't have them here. And I was never sure if it was one of those things that they just put in like high school musicals and high school like movies where they're like, here's my volcano with eruption or whatever. I thought that was just made up.
One year I studied fractals and chaos theory, and another year I studied buoyancy. I don't know.
See, I didn't even think they were real because we don't have them. I was like, and there's one of those things that I'm too scared to ask because there's some things that you see in these like high school musical or high school like like high school films, high school anything, like Saved by the Bell, and you're like, is this real?
Red October or October Sky? October Sky.
No.
Where he like has a science fair that like making a rocket and stuff.
I mean, I've maybe seen it. I've seen about 100,000 different ones where it's kids' science fairs. I just wasn't sure if they were real. Yeah, so that's good. That's good to know that this isn't just a fiction thing. Their presentation was a huge success, unfortunately as far as Liam was concerned. When their booth became the centre of attention at the small fair, Liam wanted to sink down into the ground, and well before it all ended, he wanted to get away. The problem again was Drew. Liam thought the material he'd gathered was interesting enough to make a good presentation. What he didn't think was that his notes could be reworked into something to further Drew's anti-Mr. Button cods. Who can you really trust? Drew asked an apt crowd clustered around their black curtained booth as he completed a rather distorted summary of Liam's Kelpie research. The Kelpie legend is just one of many that warn us of monsters that can lurk among us. Other forms of shape-shifting into animals abound. This is actually true. A lot of the shape-shifting lore is it's to kind of mask human fears. You know, like the idea of like the Selkies that would dance, like things that would lure men away, things that would steal people away in the night. The Kelpie was like, don't ride a horse you don't recognise because it will drown you. It's like, don't talk to strangers. You know, it's that. It's all these.
Which is also in FNAF, obviously.
It's all distilled human fears made myth. You know, like all these things all come back to the don't talk to strangers. Like if you were out on like the moors or something near a loch and you were on your own and you meet someone who's maybe got a horse and is like, you can ride that horse or whatever. Same thing. It's that, can you help me with my car? You know, like, you're in danger. Don't do this. This is and they used to mask that by saying, it's the fairies, it's this, it's that. But ultimately, what are we scared of? We're scared of other humans. They're the realest threat. But the way we make them most real to people is to make up a mythological, terrifying thing that takes that shape. So he's spitting facts in terms of like mythological background, and I think Scott knows this stuff as well. Scott is definitely interested in this stuff. We even see it in the Silver Eyes where Henry has the book on trickster gods.
Yes, that's right.
Because again, it's that trickster thing and all that. It's all ties into the same root human drives. There's the legend of the Norse god Loki and the more commonly known tales. Yeah, there's Loki. I was like, trickster gods, and it's like, Loki. And the more commonly known tales of the werewolf. Therianthropy, the ability of some humans to metamorphose into beasts, is a part of many cultures, not just the Gaelic one. Drew's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward and gazed intently at the growing crowd around their presentation booth. Who's to say that ability doesn't exist today, maybe even right here in our little town? What if someone in our town has that ability? Or even if they don't, what about the human monsters? The psychopaths who commit unspeakable crimes? What if a monster lives among us? Yeah, and again, obviously, like, among us. The werewolf myth is a myth about the beast that lives within man. Like, it's someone who's capable, who seems like a nice person but becomes a monster.
This is also a very frustrating part of human nature, which is that, like, I think a lot of times when you have a truth to tell somebody, if you just tell them, hey, this is truth, like, they don't care.
No.
But if you have a really exciting story where the truth is, like, a little bit kind of, like, not slanted for the purposes of being exciting, then maybe people pay more attention. I think in the books, like,
The best way I can...
Carlton tries to explain to the kids, like, he's a bad man. You can't trust him. And they look at him and they say, no, he's fine. He's really helpful. You can't say all this. And so he takes the picture of, like, Spring Bonnie and he draws, like, you know, he adds blood and pointy teeth and makes Spring Bonnie into a monster. Now, is Spring Bonnie a pointy teeth monster with blood? No. But I don't know. There's...
So the greatest problem with humans, right? Just to take another random tangent, right? Humans have a credibility bucket, right? So this is how, like, MLMs work. This is how cults work. This is how everything works. If someone says something, the first human instinct is to say, why should I believe you? Everybody's very skeptical. Like, if someone says, that guy's a bad guy, you have to say, what are your credentials? Immediately you're skeptical. You're like, what's your agenda? What do you have to get out of this?
Yeah.
Their credibility score is real low because they're a stranger. If your best friend said that person's a bad person, you're like, I know my best friend. My best friend, I trust them. I trust their judgment. That person is a bad person.
I see.
That credibility score matters so much.
Okay.
And it can mean that someone can say up is down and down is up, and people will believe it because their credibility score is so high and they can bank on that.
But
so
Carlton has to convince the kids, not ever knowing or having met them.
That's the thing. You can't do it. It's very difficult to do that. And the only way to do that is to build artificial credibility, which is to do, like, tell a story, or you make people believe you're, you know, like...
People like stories.
So, like, if you're a, say, I don't know, like, I was just watching the video, the H-Bomber guy video about plagiarism today. And one of the things he talks about is what a lot of these video essayists who steal stuff do is they will take other people's work, really well thought out, thoughtful work, and then sandwich their own ideas in the middle, and their ideas are wrong, unresearched, and it's their own opinion.
Right.
And because of the surrounding credibility score,
I see.
people believe them.
Uh-huh.
The credibility score thing is so real and it's so true, and it's why you can say, look, here's all this evidence that this person is a horrible person, or this thing isn't true, or flat earth is fake. But if someone is surrounded by people with high credibility scores telling them the opposite, you'll never be heard because you have to earn it.
So that's why at his booth, he talks about true facts about monsters.
There you go. He's saying all of these facts about history and monsters and whatever,
and people are
plus
like,
this thing.
I see.
And people are like, oh, that's so true. That's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you, like, it's the same thing. Like, if you were doing, like, I don't know, like, if like, again, if we weren't just doing this and I wanted to do a really successful FNAF theories channel, I would do a theory, I would artificially do, like, a theory story, like a theory video that was just all stuff that people believe already.
I see.
And I'd put my own opinion in the middle.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, wow, what a great opinion. Because they believe me because I'm on their side. If you come into it and you're immediately challenging people's brains, they don't trust you.
That's what I do a lot of the time.
You have to tell them, oh, did you know this thing, this thing, this thing? They go, yeah, I'm in your tribe. You're my friend. And then you go, but did you know this thing? And they go, and they'll give it a thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's credibility. But yeah.
I know what you mean.
It's...
Yeah, it feels, and just from my perspective, what it feels like a lot of times is people maybe have room in their hearts for one change, right?
And that's what you do. You have to pad it with other stuff that they agree with and then make that one change.
Yeah.
And it's very, very slow and it's very, very boring.
And it's rough if you have to tell them, hey, a bunch of stuff is different. A bunch of stuff has changed. And they're like, oh, you're somebody who I can't agree with anything on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And for me, I just don't care to do that. Like, no. I could do that. I could base the whole channel
on
I'm
pushing it with the Sammy stuff.
I just don't care to do it.
But I'm so
And, like, the people who are here, the people who are listening to stuff, they are people who are willing to open the whole book, open a fresh book, open new thoughts, new mind things, think about new ideas. That's the people that I'm talking to. I don't have patience to do. Like, we could do these 2-hour videos and just put one new thing in there. I'm just not here for it.
No. But yeah.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. The crowd clapped and hooted when Drew stopped speaking and nodded self-importantly. There they go. They're saying, "Oh yes, yes, I know this."
Mm-hmm.
That was when Liam sidled away from their booth. For the next 20 minutes or so, Liam wandered through the gym and checked out everybody else's pet presentations. He ate some fry bread at a booth housing a presentation on indigenous cuisine. Then he wandered over to his girlfriend's booth. When Liam came up behind Shauna and wrapped his arms around her, she whirled around and smiled up at him. She tilted her cheek for a kiss, which he gave her. "I see your booth is the place to be," Shauna said, pointing to the still-growing crowd on the far side of the gym. Liam shrugged. "I saw some of the pictures you guys put up. Shapeshifters, werewolves." Shauna shuddered. She's like, "Don't be a furry." She leaned close to Liam. I did my like topic thing. We didn't have this, but my topic was werewolves and vampires. You'll be shocked to know that was the big.
Shocked.
That's why after that, for like ever, they were like calls me Wolfie because I
really?
did this werewolf
I
thing, and I was like, great, fantastic. Also, I was like, they probably could feel I was a furry, even though I wasn't a furry openly or anything. So I was Wolfie. You know, I've always thought stuff like that was real. So do my parents. Dad says the government knows about it, but tries to cover it up so people won't panic. She's like, my dad believes in werewolves.
Yeah.
Liam couldn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Shauna had never shared that belief before. He's like, oh great, even my girl stuff. "I think what you and Drew are doing is really brave and really important," Shauna said, squeezing Liam's hand.
So this is the big problem immediately, right? Like, Drew's gotten a lot of people on his side, and they're kind of crazy conspiracy theory stuff, and Liam feels pretty isolated.
Yeah, and his girlfriend has isolated him now as well.
He went over to get some comfort. Like, he's doing these horrible, he's just making all these horrible lies up, and his girlfriend's just like,
"You guys are doing good work."
Yeah, thanks for getting the truth out there.
Liam gave her a half-hearted smile.
This story hits a little close to home with the political stuff going on as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have seen,
like, a lot of people feel very isolated right now.
Friends
as
and
well.
just to take it outside the story, but we've seen a lot of friends and family members like spouting off opinions or views that they've heard from places, and just
people that you thought were like actually
pretty
like
sensible.
Yeah. People, yeah, there's been a lot of like 2024 was a year of depressing amounts of people.
It's rough. Conspiracy theory stuff used to be kind of like
it used to be funny. I don't even feel like I can joke about it. Like I love researching conspiracy stuff, right? So you're talking about like not like it was just all like the stuff like aliens built the pyramids or whatever.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff was just fun. It was just silly. And now it's all tangled in these anti-Semitic, gross, horrible, terrible things. I'm just like, no, I don't like any of that now. And I can't even enjoy the, like, it used to be, like, silly. It was, like, you could joke about it. You know, like, you had characters like Dale in King of the Hill.
Sure.
You know, like, where he was, like, pocket sand and all that. And he was, like, into conspiracies. And it was just a laughing stock because he believed in these conspiracies, but he didn't know, like, his wife was cheating on him the entire series or whatever. You know, things like that. And now it's just, like, I just feel sick when I think about it. And I'm like, I don't even find it funny anymore. It's too real and it's too messed up. And it's, I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like I think that isolated feeling is definitely something people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if maybe Scott pushed this one out because of the political situation. You know, I think maybe like because of the weird like politics that are going on and how it feels like it's political, but I don't think he intended it that way.
No, I don't think so. Again, Sam is always a conspiracy theory character. It's because his suspicion and paranoia allows him to be
I think for that the character absolutely.
And again, in this context, he's right. He strikes the heart. You know, like he should be outlandish, and he is an outlandish outsider. Character that's too brusque, too weird, too crazy, but in the end he is right. You know, like that's the situation with him. That's his character.
Yeah, he's like, I think what you and Drew are doing is really brave and really important, Shauna said, squeezing Liam's hand. Liam gave her a half-hearted smile. Okay. He dropped another kiss on her cheek. "I've got to go," he said, and he did need to go. He couldn't deal with the tangle of thoughts that was clogging up his mind. Liam waved to Shauna and strode away from her booth. He left the school's gym as inconspicuously as he could. Liam didn't see Drew again until later that afternoon when he arrived at Just a Pizza, hoping he still had a job. Drew's SUV chugged into view as Liam was locking up his bike chain. The SUV's engine sounded ragged and it sputtered when Drew shut it off. Drew threw open his door, jumped out, slammed the door and kicked it. The kick added a new dent to the SUV's dirty white exterior. "Piece of crap," Drew yelled at the vehicle. So for me, this is interesting, right? So, like, hear me out, but I think the car...
Okay.
is like a metaphor for him, like himself. Like there's
Okay.
less and less of him left. You know, like the more he defies William, the weaker he gets. You know, I think like like we see it in you know the one where she's taking like little bits of her heart, frailty.
Frailty.
It feels like you have to give up something to do this.
Or just the animatronics.
Like, yeah, like it feels
his...
like it just feels like he's losing something. Like for this, again, the car should be irrelevant.
Yeah.
But they put a big focus on the car. He saw the car. The car was missing a light. He wouldn't give him fuel for the car because he was defying him.
The fuel thing was there's a big something about like how the kids like either need remnant or agony or something or regular supply of it. I
think like William has to feed them.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of feeding them. But we even see him like inject remnant. We see him inject remnant into Funtime Freddy and the novels as well. Like I feel like they need to be fed.
But agony seems like it's an addictive substance and it's infectious and eventually it takes over and replaces things. So you don't necessarily want to get into it. But I think once you've had of it, it's kind of addictive and you do want more.
And I think maybe he's starving him as the implication. Like, like I think there's some kind of like metaphor about like taking his energy away.
The other thing is
every time we see him, it's more run down. He's like, he almost hit a mailbox. He doesn't have any fuel. He's missing the light. Now it's all dinged up.
We see this in Security Breach as well, right? Where the animatronics just look dirtier and dirtier and more run down until in ruin they're totally like broken apart and messed up.
And he's holding out for a new car.
Okay. A new like animatronic body,
like where he's like he said he would get me a new car.
Yeah, he's like this one kind of like is the worst. Again, we think he's a Mr. Cupcake.
And we know that Henry made multiple bodies for the robots as well that they could move into.
Yeah.
So they can like hermit crab into a new body.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Charlie does it.
Yeah.
So is that what he's waiting for? He's like, I was told I would be given one as well.
Probably.
When I'm an adult in my 30s or whatever. It's just weird. He's like, piece of crap. Drew yelled at the vehicle. He spotted Liam. Can you believe it? I just found out this heap has a cracked engine block. It's going to cost $4,000 to fix it. $4,000? Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? Liam had no idea, so he didn't answer. He also didn't bother to mention that he'd suggested several times that Drew needed to put in more antifreeze as opposed to just adding water to his radiator. Instead, Liam asked the question that had been rattling around in his head ever since Drew had taken over their history presentation. What are you doing? Liam asked. Drew gave his SUV one last disgusted look, then turned towards Liam. Huh? A crow swooped past, cawing loudly. So again, like you've probably anybody that's on this channel has seen our extensive rants about crows. Any one of our Sammy videos or whatever will have all the stuff about crows in it.
I'll go over it real fast.
It's very long.
No, it's not long. So at the end of The Silver Eyes, there's a passage where Henry and Charlotte laugh at a crow together, and that's the last passage of the whole book.
Yeah. Again, like within the context of an author, first, last, big deal. First, last lines, big deal.
And then in the end of the fourth closet, a crow caws. And flies off, and that's the very last line again, the very last sentence. And that's next to again, and in the first novel, Charlotte's visiting the graves. In the last novel, John's visiting Charlotte's grave. So they're at the graves, the same gravesite. So crows are tied with that, and then in Blackbird we have like his character named Sam. He's represented by a giant blackbird. There's a passage about how it's not quite a crow, but it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
In The New Kid, there's the main character kills a crow, and that kind of kicks things off. So we think that the crows we even have GGY.
And even like in grander like literary stuff, we have like Nevermore gets mentioned. I'm pretty sure. In one of the stories. And and that's like about like a dead woman, like a dead lover or whatever, and it's like Nevermore, and stuff like that.
In GGY, there's a character that calls themselves the Morgan, and even if you look up the Morgan, it's just a woman with crows, is all the pictures of her.
Yeah.
And she's a hacker, and she says she's looking out for Tony, who's the investigative journalist character, and she says because she has a little brother too, like Charlotte.
Yeah, beyond like a million other places, like, yeah, like The New Kid has a bunch of crows. Crows appear constantly. They're into the pit on the power lines in the game. You see them in the power lines.
But specifically associated with Charlotte, even that Fall Fest picture,
They're in
Charlotte's a scarecrow and she has crows on her.
FNAF World's Halloween expansion has crow sounds, like 6 or 7 different crow sounds played over it. Like,
anyway, so it's explicitly
hugely important in the series. Gets missed all the time. Is enormously important.
Tied to Charlotte, tied to Henry, tied to their family specifically.
Yeah. Liam watched the crow land on the edge of the dumpster behind the pizzeria. The crow cocked its head and stared at the restaurant's back door.
And look at the dumpster, which is where we find Charlie's body.
And looks at the back door of the restaurant as well. It's like the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Liam returned his attention to Drew. Like, again, why have this part?
Yep.
I know, like, things get edited out.
Important.
Again, like, it's like, I don't know if people haven't written in terms of, like, writing for a novel. When you're writing for a novel, anything that isn't strictly, like, moving the narrative along gets taken out. Because you have word counts and stuff, you know, like, and especially in, like, a short story, your word count is tight. You know, like, you've got a lot of stuff to fit in there, a lot of characters to establish. Anything that's in there needs to be pruned. The fact that that hasn't been pruned and it's just a random crow means it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 100%.
It comes back in the story, too.
But... yeah. But it's just again, like, people who don't write maybe don't think. Like, you just think, oh, it's just a book. Books are intensely edited manuscripts. Liam returned his attention to Drew. He walked over and planted himself in front of his friend. What's your deal with Mr. Button? And why were you talking about monsters today? That's not what we agreed to put in the presentation. Oh, screw the presentation, Drew said. Can you believe we didn't even get a ribbon? Colour me shocked. Liam shook his head. The reactions of people like Shauna aside, Drew had turned the presentation into nonsense. Liam would be surprised if they passed their history class at this point. That doesn't answer my question. What are you trying to accomplish with all the articles about Mr. Button? And it's investigative journalism. It's lies. You made all that stuff up. I know you did. What do you have against Mr. Button? Drew looked over Liam's shoulder and sneered at the pizzeria's back door. I just hate it when someone pretends to be nice and then screws you over.
Yeah, no kidding. For William.
How did Mr. B screw you over? Liam asked. Drew cocked his head and made a "are you for real" face. You haven't noticed how stupid hard we've worked at this place for practically nothing? Liam shrugged. That's the restaurant business. Hard work for minimum wage. It's like that everywhere. That doesn't make it right, Drew shouted.
Drew's right.
He took a breath and spoke again in normal tone. It's like my dad. He could fix everything for me. He could get me a new truck. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Henry could build him a new body.
Yeah.
He could pay for my insurance and my cell phone and get us the limo that Layla wants. Layla? What happened to Zoe? Drew shrugged. She said I'm too intense. Whatever. That's not the point.
He is intense. He's intense in all the stories that he's in. That's true.
What is the point? Liam asked. The pizzeria's back door opened. Mr. Button stepped out carrying a green plastic garbage bag filled to bulging, and the crow was looking here.
Yeah, it was sitting waiting.
It was
looking
waiting
at the door.
and
It was
staring, waiting for him to come out.
That's right. So you go back. The crow cocked its head and stared at the restaurant's back door.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that to really happen.
No, like a crow would be like picks at the trash. You know, like we've got hundreds of like birds around here that like eat bins.
Well, I guess crows are smart, so it probably knows that the
but maybe he throws this stuff out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was smiling and whistling until he saw Liam and Drew. He stopped whistling and his smile sagged. Oh, hello, boys, Mr. Button said. Liam stepped over and reached for the bag. Let me take that, Mr. B. Mr. Button evaded Liam's reach. No, my boy, I've got it. Mr. Button's gaze shifted to the crow, which still sat at the edge of the dumpster. He broadened his smile into a grin that was eerily out of place in the circumstances. See? Like, he's like grins at that crow.
At the dumpster.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a Charlie and Charlie's body passage for whatever reason.
Liam stepped back and watched Mr. Button fling the bag into the dumpster. Whatever was in the bag hit the nearly empty bin with a metallic thunk. Yeah, and again, like, Mr. Button nodded in what looked like satisfaction and turned to look at Liam and Drew. He wiped his hands together, then clasped them. Clasped his hands?
Yeah.
Like
It's
Steve
a
Raglan?
hand folding gif.
Yeah. Steve Raglan stuff, that's funny. Yeah, where he's like folds his hands all the time. Well, I suppose this is good a time as any, Mr. Button said. He cleared his throat. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Here it comes, Liam thought. The fact that Mr. Button hadn't fired Drew yet was testament to the old man's good nature. Liam had figured that when Mr. Button couldn't take it any longer, Liam, as Drew's friend, would be let go too, and now was that time. Don't bother, Drew said. You're going to fire us, but don't. We quit. Liam's like, hey. Liam waddled towards Drew. He turned back towards Mr. Button. I don't, he began. I accept your resignation, Mr. Button said. He shook his head, and I'm so, so sorry about it. But I don't resign, Liam said. I don't want to quit. Mr. Button's nose wrinkled.
Especially if we think, both are kind of stuck in Golden Freddy together, like...
Yeah.
This is a really funny conversation to be having with Golden Freddy. Like, he's like, well, both of you are kind of in the same package, and both of you are in this situation.
He's like, but I don't want to. He's like, get out.
Yeah.
Mr. Button's nose wrinkled. He ran a gnarled hand through his thinning hair. He shook his head again.
Charlotte, I don't know, there's some other stuff too. I think maybe Charlotte's Cassidy, maybe she's in Golden Freddy. So maybe that's why she's present. The crow and garbage stuff are present in the scene as well. But
it could be a number of things. He shook his head again. I wish I could keep you on, my boy, he said, but without revenue, he sighed. Rob and Tracy have been with me the longest. For now, I'm going to try and keep... So he did get rid of...
Deb.
She's
just gone. Yeah.
He did get rid of Deb.
Deb's disappeared, right?
Rob and Tracy have been with me the longest. For now, I'm going to try and keep them on. Maybe things will turn around, but he blinked then stared hard at Drew. So he did hit her. I think he did. And she left.
Did she leave? What was the garbage?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe she left in the garbage. I don't know. Maybe things will turn around, but he blinked then stared hard at Drew. Liam felt a cold friction course through his body. The ferocity of Mr. Button's stare was shocking. Not that Liam blamed Mr. Button for his animosity towards Drew. Drew was single-handedly destroying the poor man.
Okay.
He's like, good. If Liam was in Mr. Button's shoes, he'd have done more than just give Drew a dirty look. Mr. Button blinked.
He's like, I would be violent against Drew.
Yeah, I'm like, good chill. Mr. Button blinked and his usual benign expression returned. He gave Liam a regretful smile. I'll have your final paychecks ready tomorrow. You can stop by and pick them up. Mr. Button adjusted his suspenders, gave the crow another glance.
Yeah.
He keeps looking nervously at this crow like, bitch, don't. And then went back inside the pizzeria. Liam watched as the door on a self-closing hinge slapped shut. He shifted his gaze to the crow, which cocked its head and stared back. Liam shook off the unease that settled over him. He rotated to face Drew. Are you happy now? He barked at his friend. Drew shook his head. You just don't get it, do you? Liam crossed his arms. Get what? That you're a jackass who's ruining an innocent man? Innocent? Are you sure? Drew grabbed Liam's arm and pulled him away from the restaurant's door. He lowered his voice to a near whisper. I know I made some stuff up at first, but the stuff about Mr. Button's past, that's all true. Before he came here, he kept moving around. Does that sound innocent to you? Liam didn't know how to answer that question, so he didn't. Instead, he unlocked his bike and rode away. Liam sat down on the edge of his bed. He rubbed his face. He could remember vaguely when sleep was one of the best parts of his day. Liam had always been a good sleeper. Once he was out for the night.
And so again, this is a very twisted story. It's just going to get more twisted as we go. So yeah.
I love this story. It's actually a pretty good one. Shauna liked to talk about her dreams, and she was always asking Liam about his. I don't dream, Liam told her. He slept so deeply that if he did dream, he didn't remember anything about it. But that wasn't true anymore.
So this
now, unfortunately, Liam remembered his dreams.
This is the problem, with, again with didophobia, where he doesn't remember what happened to him during the night. And then
and now he starts to remember. After
the gas wears off.
And as he started to question Mr. Button, he started to dream.
And started to remember his dreams.
Yeah. The night before, Liam had dreamed about being shoved into the pizza oven just before he woke. Oh, the oven.
Immediately. Again, Innard goes into the
oven. Also, again,
and,
look behind me.
Yeah.
It's the pizza oven and it's a cupcake. Just as a heads up. Also, it appears in Ruin as well as significant. That cupcake.
Molten Freddy.
That one. He's significant in the AR version. I actually want to see 2 seconds. They really want you to draw attention to that cupcake as well. Where's Ruin? Because I remember being like, wow, the AR version of the place is pretty. Yeah. So there he is in AR. And sorry, in VR's Ruin. And then there he is in the AR.
Yeah.
He's important. Like, he's definitely important. Like,
Yep.
they really want...
It's a hidden door, I think.
It is a hidden door, but it's also like, yeah, and also we have the cupcake over the place that watches you as well.
Mm-hmm.
When he woke up, just before he woke up in a panic, Liam saw Mr. Button's grinning face looking through the closed oven door as Liam screamed and pounded on the glass. Liam wasn't real keen on finding out what his dreams had in store for him tonight, but he needed to sleep. Liam sighed and laid back in his bed. He reached out and turned off his bedside light. After a few minutes, he drifted off. A crow is cawing in Liam's bedroom.
Crow? Yeah.
Liam can hear it, but he can't seem to find it. He looks all around the room. Where is the crow? Oh my god, it's the come find me, at the end of the movie as well.
Uh-huh.
Liam cautiously approaches the closet. He doesn't want to open the door because he's afraid Mr. Button will be there, but he pulls back the door anyway because he has to find the crow.
It's so weird, yeah.
Mr. Button isn't in the closet. Liam exhales in relief. He looks around the room again. The crow caws again. It sounds like the crow is under the bed. Liam crosses the room and kneels next to his bed. He bends over and peers under the bed frame. He spots them instantly. 2 glowing eyes.
Yeah, those are those eyes in the dark from
that's the like
Fredbear eyes.
Yeah.
Or whatever from FNAF World.
Yeah, FNAF World for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
but
then
pull up the Blackbird cover.
The Blackbird cover.
Blackbird.
Sure. Oh, we've only got the box set.
That's it. You can't take the covers too seriously. You're like Blackbird, and
it's like pictures of blackbirds. I'm like,
you can't take the covers too seriously, but it does have the eyes on it. They're kind of given with a little bit of limited information, so
yeah,
grain of salt. But yep.
Here you go, Blackbird.
But Scott's seen the Blackbird cover.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
By the time he wrote this, so
yeah, and obviously, like the FNAF World stuff is a lot.
And in case you haven't read Blackbird, Blackbird is a monster made by Sam that tortures guilty people.
The Blackbird will make you tell
to get their secrets, and the other character Noel is tormented by all these sorts of nightmares by the Blackbird. So, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there's the eyes.
And I will put you back together as a William line, like he tells Mike to put Circus Baby back together.
Yeah. Liam opens his mouth to shout and the glowing eyes swoop towards him. He hears the fluttering of a bird's wings, another caw, and Mr. Button's face rushes towards Liam.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Button's lips are pulled back in a macabre grin. Liam yells and scrambles away from the bed. And again, like, the grinning, like, literally in the new ones, it's like, makes the purple man grin. Mm-hmm. Makes the yellow rabbit grin.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it says that, too.
Like, it's specifically, obviously his smile is a big deal, and it always has been. Liam fumbled for his bedside light. Keep it down in there, his dad bellowed from down the hall. Yeah, and he's like, he could get hit for that. You know what I mean? Like, he's always like, oh, Liam worked to steady his breathing. Yeah, like, if his dad's angry, he's like, stop. Liam worked to steady his breathing. He looked at the floor and thought about checking under his bed, but he didn't move. He just sat in the glow of his lamp for a very long time. So this is interesting for me, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
this conjunction of Mr. Button and his dad.
Yep. Yeah, that's
See it, like, where he's scared of Mr. Button, and then immediately his dad is like, keep it down. Was it like when he was screaming or whatever?
It's funny that both Drew and Liam see their dads. Like, Mr. Burton is kind of like an alternate dad figure for them, especially when Liam's dad...
and Liam doesn't, I mean, again, like, Liam doesn't talk about his dad. Like, he hardly thinks about him.
Yeah.
Like, Drew's always like, ba 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 ba, I'm so mad about my dad. When we're in Liam's head, he doesn't think about his dad. You know what I mean? Like,
I think there's also, this is just a basic personality trait, I think there's some people that complain a lot more than other people.
You're thinking about me.
I'm thinking about you. Well, that's true. But I was going to say, I think it's an important trait. Like, there's other people on the other side of the scale. Like, there's 2 sides of the scale, right? Like, you have one side of the scale, which is people who suffer a lot and push it down. And no matter what happens to them, they don't say anything about it,
Yeah.
You dump them out in the middle of a forest, in the middle of the woods, and say you're going to eat bugs for 10 days, and they're like...
Ultimately, like, I mean, not everybody.
Yeah.
but it's a symptom of abuse. Again, like
Well,
not everybody
yeah.
who's passive is abused, but abuse teaches you to like that your responses are unwelcome.
Yeah, if you
Your
even if you
words are
ask for help,
unwelcome.
even if you ask for help,
Everything
you're
is
not gonna get
unwelcome.
help.
Like the best example I saw of abuse was like someone turned into like a little red ball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unobtrusive, like because they feel like everything they do is wrong, so they
Mm-hmm.
never want to do anything or express anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's why. And I think that's kind of Liam's like conflict averse nature comes for that. He's like, don't cause a fuss. Fuss is hurt.
Whereas some people,
Whereas Drew is like, I'm gonna cause the most fuss
yeah,
possible.
cause maximum fuss, complain about everything.
I'm a most fuss
Yeah.
possible person.
Yeah, you know, and there's something like wrong where they're like their pillow's not right. They're like throws a huge fit, calls the front office of the hotel. Is like this.
I don't do that
you're not one of those
personally.
people.
I'm like
Yeah.
huge respect for like every kind of
Yeah, you
retail
are.
person. I'm always like,
But there are, you know, you'll know, like, I
Yeah.
guess that's the, I don't know, there's like a reputation for, yeah, there's people that just, you know, go off about everything. And then, so
Yeah.
when you're on the one side of the scale, there's some part of you that says, like, why are you complaining? And it's an interesting, I think it's a very human dynamic that Scott set up that's very real here.
yeah.
And you know, I think both are a little bit, you know, like Liam could probably stand to do a little bit more complaining and confiding. He's poor. He does need the money.
Yeah.
He's getting beat up at home. He is in a bad situation. He doesn't have a car. He really badly
Yeah,
needs
and
a car.
he never says anything.
He never says anything about any of these
No.
issues. And you know, you can see,
And he stands up for like people, even though he's like, I could use more money, really.
where Drew probably, like, there are some things that Drew has done that are his own fault, that he's depending on other people, and you know, he's obviously
Unfortunately, I have to say, when in like an external stream of consciousness, once you've started that, like you can't turn it off when it's when it's trivial.
Yeah. So yeah, he's the thing. I'm too hot. There are bugs. We're outside. It's cold.
That's me.
Yeah, you know, yeah, that is you. Yeah, but I think it's in a relationship. It's good for communication. You know, if both people are shut up and shut down all the time, then
yeah, because again, you don't externalize a lot of stuff because you're so in your head because of like ADHD stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'm like, what's your problem? What is up? What is wrong? Like shakes you, like tell me, and you're like says, and I'm like, why didn't you use your words?
Yeah.
Like,
so it can be good. Here that causes communication issues between the two of them, I think. But yeah, I think the vengeful spirit's good here. I'm on board with his plan. I'm like, you tell him. Somebody has to tell him. None of the other kids are standing up to William or onto his like stupid tricks. And I'm like, yeah. Get him.
Monster was Drew's next article.
What? The title name. There we go.
They like title drops.
Yeah.
Monster.
Yeah.
Liam was eating one of his favourite microwave dinners, country fried chicken and mashed potatoes, as he started the article. By the end, in spite of the chicken's crispy crust and the potatoes' buttery aroma, he'd lost his appetite. Drew's article focused on a long string of missing persons. And again, this is the title. This is the most important article that he writes.
And what are the articles that we see on missing persons? That's the first articles that we see in FNAF 1.
Yeah.
Right? About
articles, on the wall.
And Fazbear's continuous denial, like, even if people disappeared, it didn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of people went missing, but it wasn't related to the restaurant.
Yeah. So definitely, like, this is important. Like, this is the main article. A long string of missing persons, many of them children.
Yep, children.
The missing persons, and they specifically call it missing persons, like the missing children's incident, which is what the fandom calls the the thing with like MCI. The missing persons cases were in a handful of small towns in the state, and they were supposedly linked to a serial killer who had been active for decades and had yet to be caught.
Yep.
Drew didn't come right out and accuse Mr. Button of being the killer, but he claimed Mr. Button had lived in every town that had a missing person linked to the killer.
So this in particular
This is a fact. This is a factual thing that he's found.
I feel this is pretty damning.
Yeah.
That he was in every single town that there was a missing person and there was a serial killer and he was just randomly in all of those places.
Yeah, like that would be enough to get the police to bring you in here.
Some things unspool as the story goes, but
this doesn't.
No,
this never gets addressed really.
Mm-hmm.
Only a monster could get away with such a long string of disappearances, Drew wrote, and now the monster is here. Who will disappear next?
Deb already disappeared.
Yeah, Deb's gone.
There was an assault allegation, and then I don't know. Did she show up later? I don't know. I
don't
forgot
know.
about this. I didn't notice about the whole thing about Deb the first time we read this.
For me, it made my like alarm bells go off.
Mhm.
I was like, "Where is she?" And then I was like, "There she is!" Like in the next bit.
Mhm.
And now the monster's here who will disappear next. Liam did his best to ignore Drew over the coming few days. That was pretty easy to do. At school, Drew was usually surrounded by kids now, and even some teachers asking him questions about his article, wanting more dirt on Mr. Button. After school, Liam was too busy to even think about Drew. He divided his time between applying for the few jobs available in town and scrounging up as many odd jobs as he could. Ignoring Drew, though, got harder and harder. His celebrity grew even larger than the protesting throngs outside Just a Pizza. Hiccups, it's so annoying. The only time Liam did speak with Drew couldn't stop talking about his new status. Investigative journalists are the backbone of our society, Drew told Liam. They galvanise focus and aim at society's ills.
Yeah.
Again, like, this is true. Right now, there is nothing we need more than investigative journalists. It is the most important thing. I can't remember what I was saying. We got interrupted for a second.
Investigative journalism.
Oh, investigative journalism is so important right now. So important. And with like journalism being attacked from all angles, from like all different like different places, like politically powerful places, we need people to hold people accountable.
Like, that's the core of this story, right? What is the truth?
And what happens to people who do investigative journalism as well? Like Boeing just kills them.
Yeah.
Like there are people who just go missing. Whistleblowers just fall down some steps and that's it. Like Drew is putting himself in a dangerous position here. Like he doesn't know like if this guy's a serial killer. He thinks he is, and yet he's still calling him out. You know, like Drew's annoying. Drew could just disappear. Obviously, Mr. Button doesn't like him. You know what I mean? Like it's dangerous and it's important. So I totally agree.
Tony and GGY, that's the implication. He investigates the disappearances of the school counselors, and
people tell him like Morrigan says, "Don't get too close to this. It's dangerous. I'm just telling you."
Yeah.
And then the assumption is that he gets killed.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't get too close. Because investigative journalists do die and they do disappear. Like there was like one of the biggest ones I can think of was the people that blew the lid off the Vegas, all the mafia that were running Vegas. Yeah. Someone blew the lid off it, and it was this one magazine, one like it was like the Nevada like Investigator or something, and that was crazy. You know what I mean? But it just takes one crazy person.
But I think the implication that I get with the one you should not have killed was that he has this natural investigative like attitude. Yeah. He did investigate like what happened to his dad, his sister, and William did kill him. Yeah. And then now he has the same little suspicious, angry investigator guy.
Yeah, and it's never gone away.
That becomes
and William keeps being like simmer down, and he won't.
Yeah. The extra kids. Again, it's that one you shouldn't have killed.
And we associate him with Cupcake, obviously. And, like, again, even in the movie, like, Cupcake kind of does his own thing. And then at the end, when William's like, "Look how small you are," everybody, they all hang back. And Cupcake goes, "Nah," and, like, bites him. You know, like, Cupcake's the one that is like, "I'm not waiting here. I'm not listening to you any longer."
Now, in the movie, also, you see that Golden Freddy definitely is a vengeful spirit or a vengeful guy, but I think it's a complicated structure.
The movies are completely, like, up in the air because Scott changes things.
Well, but see, look over there. There's the Golden Cupcake, which is a canonical figure.
Over there.
On the,
over there.
Golden Cupcake. So, like, we think that Mr. Cupcake, like, Golden Freddy's kind of like a composite spirit of several of the animatronics, and Mr. Cupcake is one of those that is the composite, like, and he would be the angry, vengeful, like, guy that's in there.
Yeah, and again, like it sounds crazy, but we have plenty of examples like the Stitch Wraith where multiple characters inhabit one entity.
You can't see as well, but that Golden Cupcake over there, he's next to, like, maybe you can if you move the thing. He's next to some things about rivers. See? Rivers. Like, if you wait next to a river, the body of your enemy will float by.
Yeah, this is like a little, like, river thing. For sure. And there's like Chica here as well.
Yep.
It's this.
Also, the Cupcake just has bad vibes. Look at him. You know he did it. You know he springlocked William.
He knows everything. In the movie, he's like...
Yeah. That's right.
That's cool. I can do that. The little, like, face that he does. But yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so he's busy. The only time Liam did speak with Drew couldn't stop talking about his new status. Investigative journalists are the backbone of our society, Drew told Liam. They galvanise focus and aim at society's ills. All Liam could do was grunt and say he had someplace else to be. Watching Drew strut around was sickening. It was clear that Drew was becoming addicted to all the attention he was getting.
We see as well, like, Gregory works for William in GDY. Yep. The Wizard's Most Favorite Apprentice and all that stuff. He's working for Glitchtrap. Yep. He uploads the bunny, like, virus into the thing with, like, his code, GGY, all over it, you know.
Also, if this does represent Sammy, how sad is it? Like, Liam's like, he was becoming addicted to all the attention he was getting. Sammy, whose dad, like, forgot he existed.
I know, everybody's like, Sammy doesn't exist.
Henry was like,
what doesn't mention him in his last speech.
Jen's like, your son with your wife, and he's like...
That's the whole thing about Sammy's character, right? Like,
and then the whole fandom is like, ignores him.
Yeah, he got ignored for like 6 games. You know, if he's Mr. Cupcake, he was in every single game, and the fandom ignored him every single game. And then, like, you know, we finish off FNAF 6 and everybody's like, what a great relief, what a great story, everything's over, we didn't forget anything or anybody.
Scott knows it. Scott did it, like, Freddy in Space, the charity stream, where, like, he knew everybody was going to try and obviously collect as much money as possible and ignore the time limit, because they just wanted to get money for charity. And if you exceed the time limit, then the end happens and the kid isn't there.
Yeah.
Like, Freddy's son is just gone. Like, he died, you forgot all about him, and everybody lived happily ever after without him.
Yes.
And only later, when people were, like, doing the timer, did they go, oh, there's the ending where he's there.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we think, you know, all those games happened, you know, and then everybody's like, what a good ending that resolves the thing for every single character. And they're like, and that's when Scott meant to finish the series. That's the last game in the series. And it's like, you forgot about one character.
Yeah.
UCN comes in, hitting, like, swinging big with the character, like, so, and everybody's like, who's this guy? Like, you know, like, big face, like, you forgot about someone, I'm super mad at you, and you're going down. And it was like, who's this? What are you guys talking about? So, you know, it's fun. Yeah, it is funny that
he's, like, enjoys the attention.
Yeah, the UCN attention.
As he fed the frenzy fed him.
Mm-hmm.
And both frenzies were too much for just a pizza. A few days after the history fair, an open on Friday and Saturday evenings only sign appeared on Just a Pizza's front door. Liam heard about the sign from Shauna, who otherwise had been barely speaking to him. They'd had a fight about Mr. Button. She was on the Mr. Button is a demon bandwagon. She'd become obsessed with Mr. Button and what a horrible monster he was. And she couldn't understand why Liam continued to stick up for the Beast. The only reason I'm not breaking up with you, Shauna had told Liam, is that I want my prom night. You promised you'd take me, so you have to. No, I don't, Liam thought. But he didn't bother to say it. He couldn't think about Shauna and the prom. All he could think about was poor Mr. Button.
Poor Mr. Burton.
No one saw him put up the sign, Shauna said now. Someone said he probably shape-shifted during the night and put it up when no one was looking. I don't know why he's bothering to stay open at all. Doesn't he know we don't want him here? Liam rolled his eyes and walked away from Shauna. The rest of the school day, he was antsy. He couldn't wait to get to the pizzeria to check on Mr. Button. I'm like, you don't work there anymore.
I know.
When Liam got to the restaurant, however, Mr. Button wasn't around, or he was pretending not to be around. Mr. Button lived in an apartment above the pizzeria. Yeah, so he lives upstairs.
Yeah.
You could get to the apartment from a staircase inside the building and one from outside. So he can get in his house from there.
Sister location seems to be beneath the restaurant.
Yeah, there's like, you know? It's literally
and it seems connected to Mike's house and connected to, like, all those things are interconnected.
Yeah, for sure. Like, even in the Help Wanted things. There you go. So Help Wanted. As in, like, the elevator into the Help Wanted location is in the back room here, like the employees only back room.
Yep.
And, like, Shadow Bonnie's here as well. Yeah.
Let me put there.
Liam climbed that one, a flight of weathered grey steps, and knocked on Mr. Button's door. Mr. B, Liam called through the door while knocking had no effect. Nothing. Liam stepped over and tried to peer through the window near the door. The window, however, was covered with thick drapes. Through the narrow crack between the drapes, all Liam could see was darkness. Liam went down the stairs and knocked for the third time on the pizzeria's back door. He wriggled the knob. If Liam hadn't been fired, he could have unlocked the door. Unfortunately, Mr. Button had requested the key when he gave Liam his last paycheck. Liam stepped back and stared at the burgundy exterior of the pizzeria. It's burgundy as well.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, he noticed how foreboding the colour was. Yeah, the building, although shaped like those around it, stuck out somehow, as if it was thrumming with an energy that set it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Did Mr. Button have something to do with that?
The purple and the agony and the
specifically,
dark energy.
Specifically, we hear like the pizzeria is infused with like an ambient like bad
agony.
feeling.
And
we see it in again the Silver Eyes, where no one will rent the mall.
Yeah, and the whole mall ended up abandoned because everybody just has bad feeling about the place.
Yeah, they would just come to see it and be like, no, this doesn't feel right somehow in like a gut level.
Yeah.
Liam shook himself and snorted. He was being dumb. Again, he's like disregards his instincts.
Yeah, instinct so many times, and so many times he shakes off those instincts.
The building was just a building. Just a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
He was letting all the monster talk get to him. Liam sighed and got on his bike. Bumping down the potholed alley, he headed towards the back streets.
And this is just a story.
Yeah, just his story. Back streets that would take him home. He was supposed to clean his neighbour's gutters in half an hour. As Liam pedalled past the dry cleaners and hardware store, he thought about everything he'd heard lately. Shauna was just one of hundreds of people who wanted Mr. Button to admit what he really was. The Button Gone chant had been replaced with reveal yourself.
Also, obviously, like, on a literal level in this story, like, obviously it's crazy to suspect someone of being a werewolf shapeshifter demon who monstrously is in the town, like, an actual creature. Like, obviously that doesn't make much sense, but, you know.
No protest signs had been made. They read, show your true face.
But we saw earlier where Drew talks about it directly. He's like, talks about werewolves, monster shapeshifters. He's like, and by that, it's kind of a metaphor because...
For sociopaths.
Yeah, who are serial killers for children.
Yeah.
He's like, just saying.
Drew's latest article had spurred on that theme. What are you hiding, Mr. Button? Drew had asked in his next headline. The article expanded on the missing persons cases in the law enforcement task force formed to find the serial killer supposedly responsible for the disappearances.
Mm-hmm.
The police say the killer is probably someone who appears to be perfectly normal, Drew wrote. He quoted one of the detectives searching for the killer who said, "We're looking for an unholy murderer hiding behind a mask of respectability. Our job is to find him and unmask him." The next day, Liam had heard Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt!
Okay. Like, yeah.
The ancient farmer who was famous for his preachy billboard messages. That was the one that started it.
Okay.
Remember he saw that like demons like are among us or whatever. It's Schmidt.
Okay.
Put up this appeal: we must rid our town of its evil.
Isn't that Mike? Is that Mike's name in the
yes,
movie?
Mike Schmidt.
Mike Schmidt.
Yeah.
And then presumably like his like Henry or
presumably his mum's name, maybe, I don't know.
No, his dad.
Oh yeah.
His dad in the movie. His dad is Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, Mr. Schmidt.
Like Mike's dad in the movie, who isn't William.
Yeah.
Is Mr. Schmidt, right?
Yeah, I think so. Probably if he's
Some
Henry,
people had
especially.
thoughts that he had been Henry. Well, I'm not sure. Or anything,
No, but I think that's
interesting.
We must rid our town of its evil.
That's kind of old man consequences,
Catch a fish.
right? Yeah.
Catch a fish, but the fish is William. The day after that, the town council had held a meeting to discuss how they could get Mr. Button to
I wonder
leave.
if Schmidt is like really Henry's last name.
That would be funny. Henry Schmidt.
Yeah.
Liam veered to avoid a kid on a tricycle, and he turned onto the road that would lead him back to the double wide. Even more so than usual, Liam felt like he was living on a Hollywood film set. This couldn't be real. There's another one of those, like we mentioned, like, this can't be real, it's fake, it's not real, sort of.
Like I said, I think this whole scenario is set up for Liam's benefit. Yeah. Liam's the one who needs convincing.
Liam's like, my world doesn't feel real, everything's weird, why is it like this?
I don't think it might not be real. Like, I think Liam may be the only real person in this story.
I think
that sounds great.
Again,
but...
for me, like, this could be his internal world. He's working at a pizzeria.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that could be how he sees, you know, like, because again, we've got we literally see the kids have an internal world.
Yeah.
Like, in the fourth closet, he goes into the world, and it's a pizzeria, and there's kids, and they're all running around, and it's nice, and we even see the, like, weird, like Mike goes into his own internal world, which just happens to be like a Nebraska forest.
FNAF world, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but in the movie,
Yeah.
he's got his own little world that he goes into as well intentionally.
This couldn't be real.
Yeah, this couldn't be real. It seems like everyone in town had turned against Mr. Button, and why? Because a disgruntled jerk wrote a bunch of lies. Liam wished he could have talked to Mr. Button today. He'd been planning to suggest that Mr. Button sued Drew. What he's writing is libel, Liam had wanted to say. Gravel crackled under the brake's tyres as Liam turned into his driveway. He braked to a sudden stop. Spraying gravel assaulted the trash can sitting next to the road. The sound of it was like machine gun fire. Liam blinked at what had stopped him. His mom's car was in the driveway. She hadn't been home in 2 days. He'd thought she was gone for good.
Yeah, so all this has been happening, right? He's really concerned about Mr. Burton. Casually in the background, of course, he's living in a very abusive situation. His mother's being abused. His mom was gone and hasn't been talking to him. He thought that she had left.
Yeah, like she was just gone, like for 2 days, and he was like, maybe she's never coming back. But no, there was his mom sitting on the front porch with his dad. Liam got off his bike and headed towards them. Hey Mom, Dad, he said brightly as if they were a regular family. His mom was bent over a copy of the latest school paper. He could see the dark roots of her bleach blonde hair. Did you see this? His mom asked. Drew says there's going to be a rally tomorrow to get Mr. Button to leave town. His mom looked up. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks were flushed. You're going, aren't you, Liam? Am I the last rational person in this town? Liam asked himself as he brushed past his parents and went to his tiny room.
His mom's excited about the get Mr. Burton out of town plan. That's fair.
Liam threw his backpack on his small bed and sat down next to it. Everyone was falling for this trash. Yeah, but again, like that, Liam has this blank space where he does not talk about his family.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's like, maybe I thought she was gone for good. Like, at no point we've been with him, which has been all of this, he's been, like, concerned about that.
Yep.
Liam stood at the far edge of a pulp.
I think Liam's just so used to smothering all of his natural signals, all of his instincts, all of his reactions, all of his own personal feelings. I think he's so used to just pushing
being
all of
shut
it down.
Liam stood at the far edge.
And he's so annoyed at someone saying, like, or calling out, like, problems.
Yeah, he's like, don't cause problems, you'll make it worse, is probably his feelings.
Yeah.
Liam stood at the far edge of a pulsating crowd gathered on an overflow athletics field near the school. The field was where the school held the occasional pep rally, picnic, or bonfire. Liam wasn't sure, but it looked like at least 3/4 of the town's population was congregated on the scruffy grass today. Men and women, old and young, teens, kids, and adults were packed together, charged up and primed with rabid outrage. The townspeople's wrath was spun into such a frenzy that Liam had trouble seeing the individuals as separate people. They were more like a single entity surging with fear and animosity. Drew had parked his SUV on the edge of the field, stood on the hood. He held a megaphone. The crowd as a whole was staring raptly at Drew. Someone needs to confront him, Drew was saying now, and since I'm the one who exposed him, I'm the one who should do it. The crowd cheered. Several people whistled and howled. Liam stared into the pack and tried to turn it back into familiar people instead of a single-minded throng. As he scanned the massive group, he spotted person after person he'd known for years. There was Mr. Crawford, the friendly old guy who ran the local grocery store. His bald head shone in the sun as he shook his fist and joined the cheers. Liam was shocked. He'd thought Mr. Button and Mr. Crawford were friends.
I think, again, another maybe Henry in the crowd or something.
And there was Olive Ferguson, the head of the local library. With the thick lenses of her tortoiseshell glasses making her eyes look huge on her face, she was beaming as she yelled yes after everything Drew said. Like you.
Yes, that's me. Finally, there I am, the head of the local library, the book people. This is us. Yes, it is me. Here we are. Finally. There's our self-insert character.
Yeah.
I'm like, get him, Drew.
Whenever I think of Monster, I think of you like, yeah.
The head of the local library. It's us. We've read everything, Scott. We understand everything that you're saying to us. Mr. Burton can get what's coming to him.
If our town is going to be safe, we have to eradicate its evil. Drew bawled. Yes, cried Olive. You're like, yes. Someone else shouted, drive out the evil.
The devil.
Liam the devil.
Like, like a devil. That's the Only Consequences line as well.
Yeah, the devil. Liam craned his neck and spotted the mayor's wife, a very caring woman who was always there when someone was in need. A faint sheen on her face glistened in the sun. Her smile was beatific. Liam backed away for the throng near
This
Drew's
is kind of a
SUV.
classic horror trope as well, where you get a group of
It's
like
not
a
like
mob
Beauty and the
of
Beast.
self-righteous
Beauty and the
mob.
Beast.
Yeah, where people are like normally like good people that
It's
you would see are
time
all.
to take some action, boys. It's time to follow me. It's that scene. It's the mob scene.
Yeah, mobs are scary. Mobs made up of people who think they're doing the right thing are scary. But anyway, they are doing the right thing.
He ran until he reached the trees surrounding the field. There he leaned back against the sturdy rough base of an old maple tree. He bent over and caught his breath, inhaling the scents of the sun-saturated grass and thick, musty loam.
At least it's not musky.
I know. Liam clenched his fists and thought hard. He'd been thinking the town had lost its mind, but the protesters were all kind, reasonable people. What if they weren't crazy at all? What if the crazy one here was him?
That's that reputation thing you said. So far he's been believing Mr. Burton because Mr. Burton's reputation thing is really high with him. But I guess he was like, all these people have good reputations too.
Yeah.
Or credibility or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, these are credible people. They must be right. I must be wrong.
Mm-hmm. But again...
And that's also how gaslighting works.
Yeah.
Gaslighting is effective because someone with a high credibility score is like, that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And human nature is, this person is right because they have high credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that can override your own thoughts. That's how cults work as well.
I see. Yeah.
The high credibility, like someone in a cult says, actually, you believe everything I say, this is all true, and then you go, I don't really agree with this, but this overweighs what I believe.
It's weird because there's kind of layers here, right? Like, I think Liam's like base instincts are he's afraid of Mr. Burton. Yeah. He has nightmares about Mr. Burton. He flinches away from Mr. Burton. He feels like something's wrong. Then, like, the next layer would be, like, he likes Mr. Burton. He trusts Mr. Burton. He wants to help Mr. Burton. And then there's, like, the other layer on top of that would be...
It's finally allowing him to give voice to his internal, feelings a bit.
Okay. When the tides have turned outside.
And that's how stuff works for the negative. Like, in political stuff, when someone has a horrible, rancid opinion, maybe, like, somewhere in their gut.
Mm-hmm.
But their normal, like, everyday stuff that's pushing down on it is you can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hear credible people or the mob saying that, this horrible stuff starts to come up.
I see.
And they're more likely to agree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it meets halfway. Like, you don't always need to have this down here, but it makes you much more susceptible.
It's just sad because I see him here and I'm like, Liam, I wish you would listen to your instincts based on your instincts and have trust and faith in, like, what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. But either way, he's like, I don't know. People are social creatures.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to belong. He wants to just get along with everybody. He wanted to get
along with
Mr.
that's
Burton,
what's happening with the mob itself. Everybody's like, oh, this person's reasonable, so this is real. This is everybody gets caught up in stuff because once you have a mob, the power of that to turn other people to join the mob is enormous because you have a big clump of credibility people.
I see, yeah.
And they say, we should get rid of Mr. Button, and then some random guy who had no opinions like, I'm gonna get rid of Mr. Button. You know, like
there's just fear too. Fear that if you're turning against the opinions of the...
Then they might turn on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, I'm just not gonna say anything because I don't know if this is gonna like turn quickly against me. So like, yeah, people just go along. What if the crazy one here was him? What if he was the only one who'd been fooled by Mr. Button? Was that possible? Now that he'd asked himself these questions, Liam had to have the answers, and he knew how to get them. Liam turned and raced away for the rally. He headed home and got on his computer. An hour later, Liam didn't know what to believe. He still thought everyone else had gone off the deep end, however, a little doubt was starting to creep in. He needed more information. Liam pulled his laptop closer and put his hand over the keys. Over the next 20 minutes, he composed a half-dozen emails. If he couldn't find the answers he wanted, maybe someone could help him get them. In spite of his reluctance to go to sleep and risk having another nightmare, Liam was too tired to stay up after he sent the emails. He fell into bed fully clothed and he was asleep before he even turned out his light. Liam enters his bedroom and drops his backpack on the floor. He looks at the pack, thinking he should pull out his books and do his homework, but he's so tired. It's also worth mentioning this is a tense change.
Okay.
I think. Enters rather than entered. Yeah, so it's a tense shift.
Where it's like more...
It's immediate, it's in the moment. Like, Liam turned towards his bedroom door and pushes it closed. As the door swings shut, Mr. Button steps out from behind the door. His eyes preternaturally bright, like a predator's eyes seeking its prey, because that's that reflectiveness.
That's exactly the reflective that you do. And Scott knows that because I'm not going to say Scott's a furry.
He knows about animals,
He
I
has a lot
guess.
of animal fact knowledge.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Mr. Button spears Liam with a long, scathing look. What do you see, my boy? Mr. Button asks. Mr. Button gives Liam an impossibly wide grin. Retreating from Mr. Button's lair, Liam trips over the braided rug covering his bedroom's warped floor. He falls back, opening his mouth to scream. Liam opened his eyes and shielded them for the brightness of his lamp. He looked towards his closed door. Nothing was there. He wiped his face with a trembling hand. So again, this is night terror stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, Liam stayed after school to talk to Drew. He wanted to discuss what he'd found
What
and
he
what
found.
he hadn't.
What he
we
found.
found.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, as Liam knew he would be, was in the school newspaper's office. Surprisingly, he was alone. Where are all your acolytes? Liam asked in a light
Yeah,
tone.
where's Pete? I'm sad we don't
As he
see
strolled
Pete
into
again.
the compact room crammed full of shelves, desks, and computers. The room smelled like stale coffee and accumulated dust. Liam sneezed as he weaved around two small desks and two stacks of files and books. He perched next to a computer monitor on the desk across from Drew's. Drew, his face screwed up in concentration, looked up. His gaze was unfocused for a couple seconds, then his expression cleared. He sat back and pushed up his sleeves. That's when Liam noticed Drew's forearms were bandaged. What happened to you? He asked. Drew frowned in confusion. What? Liam pointed at the big white bandages and the smaller cuts that could be seen on the skin around them. What did you do to yourself? Drew looked down at his arms. He paled. Then he suddenly jumped up and raced to the office door. He closed it, locked it, and pulled the beige shade that hung over the door's window. Liam raised an eyebrow as he watched. He crossed his arms and leaned away when Drew returned and sat on the desk next to him. Drew leaned in too close. His breath was hot against Liam's neck.
Okay, so as well, we see here. This is
the he's always watching thing as well. Like Vanessa reacts this way.
Yeah.
Like when someone asks about her dad, like what about your father or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, he can always hear me. He's always there. He's always listening.
And therapy tapes. Yeah.
And Drew reacts the same way here, where he's like gets asked and then he's like shuts the door, shuts the blinds. Like the way he reacts here is not a normal way to react.
It's interesting as well because like Drew does have a voice, it seems like, when he feels heard and he feels powerful for being felt heard, but ultimately, like, does he have anyone that's close to him or any friends? Is anyone helping him do stuff?
Like Liam thinks he's annoying.
Yeah.
Liam's like, you're my friend, but you're annoying.
Liam's Drew's only friend, and he doesn't even like him that much. And Drew is working hard on these articles pretty much alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and him being again, like even if this is like a self-harm thing, the way he reacts isn't normal.
No.
Like he's like immediately like shuts the door, shuts the blinds.
But this issue is very confusing. We'll see.
Again, like if this was like he would hide that probably.
Yeah.
Your first instinct would be like, oh, I didn't mean you to see that.
Yeah.
Instead, he's like, someone will hear you.
Yeah.
Is his response.
Mm-hmm.
It was Mr. Button, Drew said. Liam leaned further back. He looked at Drew out of the corner of his eye. What was? Drew gestured at his wounds. Liam jumped up. He faced Drew. You're saying Mr. Button did that? He asked loudly. Shh. Drew glanced over his shoulder at the door. See, he's like, he can hear us even here.
It's interesting, too. This is where I said it was interesting, back when we had the thing that, like, where they were, like, his door's shut all the time.
Yeah.
And it's locked, and it's when Drew has disappeared.
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah.
And he's him looking at the door as well.
Mm-hmm.
Liam continued to stare at Drew. I don't understand. Are you saying he attacked you? Drew hesitated, then nodded. What did he do exactly, Liam asked. Drew ignored the question. He swallowed hard and paled, then motioned for Liam to come back and sit down again. Liam frowned, but returned to the desk and sat next to Drew. He turned to look at his friend, but Drew didn't meet his gaze. He was staring at the floor. A vein throbbed visibly beneath his ear. This wasn't the first time he hurt me, Drew whispered. What? Drew pulled his gaze for the floor. He turned to look at Liam. You have no idea what it's been like, he said. What are you talking about? Liam asked. Drew cocked his head and studied Liam for several long seconds. Liam started getting antsy. What? Liam asked. Why are you looking at me like that?
And this is weird also, within like this this is in the context of like Liam has been abused and been hidden like wounds and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, and Liam won't tell people because people he's like, people won't believe me.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about? Liam asked. Drew cocked his head and studied Liam for several long seconds. Liam started getting antsy. What? Liam asked. Why are you looking at me like that? Instead of speaking, Drew pulled up his shirt sleeve to reveal his upper arms. Liam frowned and started to scoot back away from Drew, but Drew grabbed Liam's forearm. "Look at my arms," Drew commanded. Liam jerked away from Drew. "What the?" He stopped when his gaze landed on Drew's left bicep. A series of white scars zigzagged across Drew's upper arm. Most of the scars were small, thin, and faint, but a few of them were thick and ropey. One ran from the inner side of Drew's elbow up in a serpentine pattern almost to Drew's shoulder. Liam found himself reaching out to touch the long scar. He wasn't sure why. Perhaps he was trying to reassure himself that he wasn't hallucinating. Was the scar real? Liam's fingers settled on the scar's warm, lumpy tissue. It felt like a scabrous worm. Again, also, William literally has a torture chair in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he literally has a torture chair. He hurts people to make them scared and then harvests the fear, presumably, is all I can guess.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably this is what's been happening to him. It's just, this is so weird. And this part, like, again, people, like, really shut down on talking in this because they were like, it's self-harm themes. But he never says that. He says, someone hurt me.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna. I'll get into this scene a bit more once. There'll be several more reveals about this scene. I'll talk about it more in depth then, I think.
Yeah, but it's just worth saying, like, again, like, he's saying this happened to me, and even the reader doesn't believe him. It's crazy, but yeah.
No, so as a reader, our journey and our experience here, we're not sure what's going on, right? Who should we believe? You know, Drew's claims are pretty incredible. He's, you know, he obviously has made up some stuff.
For me, the interesting one is the one that runs up to his shoulder as well.
Yeah. So obviously Drew has made up some stuff, right? Like Mr. Burton can't be a werewolf, or a kelpie. You know, that doesn't make any sense. But the stuff about the disappearances and stuff, that's pretty freaky. We saw Mr. Burton washing blood off his hands. Yep. Deb's disappeared. He's been locked in that office, and now. So we feel, you know, reading the story, we're like, a lot of stuff seems made up and it just doesn't make very sense. And we've seen in Drew's head, and Drew's kind of a bit of a glory hound. He likes the attention. He complains about a lot of stuff. He didn't seem, you know, Drew wasn't worried in his head about being abused by Mr. Burton or something, you know, but you know, Liam only worried once as well, you know, so suddenly, for
me, this story cuts deep because it's a very good metaphor for people who are abused. And not being believed. One of the things that happens is people say, I've been friends with this person for years. I know them. They would never do that.
Yeah.
And will disregard anything. Again, it's the credibility thing.
Yeah.
It works in all sorts of ways. But yeah, it just makes me think, because I've been watching, the guy that made Petscop, one of the ARG things, made like a little screensaver, like a fake screensaver. Screensaver doesn't exist, it's told through screenshots. Nexpo and all that, all the big horror YouTubers have covered it, I think, at this point, but it's 3D Workers Island is what it's called, 3D Workers Island, and it's 3D Whisker, and it's a bit abuse as well, and how on this little like screensaver, one of the little girls gets, like, everybody ignores her, and it's more like metaphysical and stuff, but yeah, this is also about that, because he's immediately like, what happened? Was it Mr. Button? You know, like, could it be Mr. Button?
So far in the story, like I said, we've had a lot, and all of it's been so far pretty distant, right? Like, maybe in some place far away, Mr. Burton did something bad or something, you know, nothing has really been like, you know, there and visceral. So, you know, we've gone on this journey, and we're kind of, and Liam's starting to question a bit now, you know, does he have a point? I don't know. What is it? So this scene is obviously a big, traumatic, strange, dark reveal.
Yeah.
With
people did not know what to do with this scene
with
at all.
Physical damage that Drew has. That's hard to, you know, if you're trying to make up your mind, right? Who's telling the truth here? What's the right side of this story? And then, you know, like, the person who has seemed not very credible up to this point.
And again, like, Drew never brought this up to the mob or anything.
No.
He never went, look at me and my scars.
Didn't write an article about how he avoided this topic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but like, the story has a few twists and turns. I'll tell you what I think about this scene.
I wasn't getting into like too much either. I'm just saying, like, I think like it's worth bearing in mind how you yourself feel about this reveal. You know, like, because it says a lot about the overarching themes and stuff.
Story's
Is what I mean.
very twisty. I think it's good. It's good for that. It has a lot of moments where you're like, I don't know what to think.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to think or where the story would end up, so it's fine.
Liam's fingers settled on the scar's warm, lumpy tissue. It felt like a scabrous worm. He whipped his hand back. His fingertips were tingling. He could feel his pulse throbbing fast and hard. What happened? Liam whispered. Mr. Button, Drew said. Liam shifted his gaze from the scars to Drew's face. Mr. Button did that? He shook his head. No way, he thought. That's not all he did, Drew said. Suddenly, Drew reached for the hem of his shirt. In a rush, he pulled the shirt up and over his head. Liam gasped and leaped to his feet. He took a stutter step back and gawked at Drew's arms and torso. The scars on Drew's upper arms were surprising, but what Liam was looking at now was shocking, appalling. Drew's chest and stomach were crisscrossed by a seemingly infinite number of scars similar to the ones on his upper arm. Long scars, short scars, thick scars, thin scars. Drew looked like he'd been sliced dozens, no hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Liam felt his stomach churn. Bile rose up in the back of his throat, and then it got worse. Drew turned around. So this is interesting as well.
Yeah.
Liam reached out and clutched the desk to keep himself upright. Drew's back was a mangled mass of pink and white scars. It looked like he'd been flayed over and over and over. Hardly any of the skin on his back was normal. It was all ridged and etched. Liam's gut tightened at the thought of the pain Drew must have endured. Do you see now? Drew asked softly. Do you see what Mr. Button's really like? So again, like, from people's interpretation of this, you can't do that to your own back easily.
Yeah.
As well.
So this complicates the subject, right? Like, yes.
Because when you first see the forearms and stuff, people immediately do think this is cutting or whatever.
But it's extreme damage over the whole of his body.
Yeah. Like his back is like as if he's been whipped for years.
It'd even be hard for a person to do that to somebody else. Like, it's really odd, the extent of the damage on his body. I'll say, because we already said he's the vengeful spirit, I'll say that I think that the vengeful spirit would have been, really, really messed up by whatever happened to him. And if he was talking to someone, like another ghost who's lost their memories and maybe didn't know what was going on, yeah, you could be like, look, I got murdered. I'm really messed up. Like, obviously, like, I think that, and yeah, you would, but I think Scott frames it here in a way where it becomes kind of a puzzle and a mystery that's kind of a question. But yeah, you can see where, like, Liam's going back and forth on this.
Scott can't go into the horror of what happened to the kids. He would never do that much, like, gore. But he makes it horrific by the framework of potential that he puts around it.
And I will say as well, in the novels, people have some questions about, like, when the kids go in the suits. But the novels say explicitly they are killed by the suits. So William, there is a knife involved, but William did put them in the suits and they died. They were killed by the suits and died in the suits. We know about the mechanisms of the suits and how they work as well. And we do know how they work on an adult. We see it, but with a child, it would just be, you just put them in. We
see a kid in one of them into the pit.
Okay.
Kid
where he's just scrunched up in the chest. He wouldn't be able to fit through all of it. So obviously, that's apparently what William did to the kids. So, yeah.
And flayed is fire.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh,
flayed's like skinned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hardly any of the skin on his back was normal. It was all ridged and etched. Liam's gut tightened at the thought of the pain Drew must have endured. Do you see now? Drew asked softly. Do you see what Mr. Button's really like? Liam continued to stare at Drew's mutilated skin. Why would Mr. Button do that? Liam asked.
I guess I'll say, I'll go ahead and spoil it a little bit just because this is such a sensitive topic. And I think some people were also sensitive about this being like people using this for theorizing or parallels. In this story specifically, Scott calls this out and says it's not self-harm.
100% it is never described as self-harm.
So it's not meant to do that. I don't think Scott's making light of that, and I don't think that's not the theme intended here. I do think there are.
Scott takes these themes extremely seriously. Yeah. Extremely. And this is not that. He is harmed. He is harmed by someone else.
Yeah.
And he never and again, like, it's almost disrespectful and victim blamey to say otherwise. Like, he's telling us what happened to him as a character.
Well, the story. Well, we'll get into it.
But again, but
I'm saying that
for me, it's just he is saying this happened to me. We have to take that at face value.
Well,
like see. Just now, anyway. Like yeah, I'm just like I don't know, and like yeah. Why would Mr. Button do that? Liam asked. Drew threw up his hands. That's what I've been writing about, because he's a monster.
But see, so, this is again, so this seems in contrast because this is a very serious thing that's happened. But Drew hasn't written about Mr. Burton's abuse of him, or that he's been calling him back and like destroying his body for years in like hundreds of ways. It doesn't really make sense or line up. His reaction
Liam kept shaking his head, but why hasn't he ever done anything to me? That's the abuse argument that people make all the time.
Yeah, I know you talked about that.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Like, one person gets singled out and abused for years, and then when they tell everybody else, they say, that can't be true. Why didn't they do it to me?
Yeah.
Because abusers know not to do that. They know to pick out someone who won't be believed. Yeah, I'm like, people should always speak up about these things, but it's not always pleasant for them when they do. Like, this is what's happening. And he's like, this is why I didn't write about this stuff. Drew shrugged and pulled his shirt back on. Liam was relieved, but he could still see all the scars in his mind's eye. Who knows how he picks his victims, Drew asked.
Again, I found Drew doesn't seem terrified, like traumatized, or he seems like a bit
He's like annoyed
he
about
seems
it.
restless. Yeah. So obviously, there's incongruent things here that make it kind of a weird, mysterious, like dark scene.
Yeah. Like, again, like if this was a really heavy topic, Scott would have treated it with sensitivity, because like the real Jake, he handled that with sensitivity.
He did, yeah.
It would have been handled with Drew's emotions. Drew's emotions here are kind of annoyed and kind of like, I don't want him to hear me.
Yeah.
He could only go 2 steps each way, so watching him made Liam's head hurt. The thing is, Drew said as he paced, I'm not sure how to tell people. I don't want to cause a panic. Things could escalate. People could get hurt. What are you talking about? Liam tried to sound nonchalant, but his voice broke. The doubt he'd been entertaining since he'd done his research was growing into a knowing he didn't want to face. Drew suddenly stopped pacing. He leaned down and looked into Liam's eyes. You know, don't you? You get it now? Liam looked away. What do I know? Drew grinned and waited. Liam took a deep breath and then exhaled loudly.
It's funny from a vengeful spirit perspective of all that. He's like not super bothered about it. He's like, look at this.
Yeah.
He's like, I got totally messed up. And he's like, what do you mean you got messed up? He's like, totally messed up. And he's like, what do you mean?
Wow.
And he's like, it's because that guy. We got to get that guy, right? And he's like,
I guess.
What?
Liam took a deep breath and then exhaled loudly. Okay, I admit it, I'm freaked. If Mr. Button actually did that to you. Drew gestured at one of the fresh slashes in his left arm. He did. Liam took a deep breath and exhaled. Okay, yeah, I looked into it and you're right. Mr. Button has lived in all the towns people have disappeared from. And you're right. There is a manhunt for a serial killer, and at least one witness claimed to have seen an older man running from where the latest missing person was last seen. An older man. Yeah, there you go.
So, so he went, maybe you were like, maybe Liam's or Drew's making all this up. Like, he did fudge a bunch of facts. He said he was going to fudge some history, but he looked, and not only is it true that there were a bunch of disappearances and child disappearances, keep in mind, and that there is a huge manhunt for a serial killer, and the person they've seen running away from the crime this time is an old person that matches Mr. Burton's description. And Mr. Burton lived and was at the scene of the crime for all those places. That's what we see with William as well. Like William's crimes where that's essentially what the policeman said. Like every time a kid disappeared, William was like, he was available. That's, they can't prove it because they couldn't find any bodies in the Silver Eyes, but that's what the police department says. Like they looked into it and William was the one who was there all the time. Like,
yeah, and they were like, we just can't do anything.
Yeah.
But Drew barked out a laugh. I told you. Liam frowned. I'm not done investigating yet. I sent emails to some researchers. I thought I'd see what they could dig up. Maybe they can find something we didn't find. Drew shook his head. Liam sighed. Yeah, what did it matter what the researchers found? If Mr. Button had been hurting Drew all this time, some of the scars look pretty old. The man's past wasn't really important. Why didn't you ever tell me about this? Liam asked. Why didn't you tell Drew about your stuff, Liam? You know what I mean? Like, It's the same thing. Drew grimaced. Mr. Button warned me not to tell anyone. If I did, he said he'd make my life miserable. And who would believe me? He'd say I made it up. How could you make up wounds like that? Liam asked. Drew shrugged. Liam stared at one of Drew's bright red cuts. His gaze settled on the bloodstain he could see through the gauze bandage. Mr. Button did that? He'd been torturing Drew for years? Liam didn't want to believe it. Liam? Drew said. Liam lifted his gaze to meet Drew's. Haven't you seen that look Mr. Button gets in his eyes sometimes? Drew asked. Goosebumps rose on Liam's arms. Yeah, he'd seen that look.
That's weird for him to bring that up, right?
Yeah.
Like that's that's not, there's facts and there's really odd things and there's various things, but this is something that touches on Liam's instincts.
Yeah, he was like, "Did you not see it?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he'd seen that look. Liam thought back to all the strange things he'd seen in the previous few weeks. They were small things, but added together they were significant. The way Mr. Button's eyes had shone that day in the kitchen, the way his face had looked in the shadows, and the way Mr. Button's gaze could harden, revealing darkness that his usual serene exterior hid. And how about the blood in his hands? What was that about? And then there was the fact Mr. Button locked himself into his office so often. What was he doing in there? That crow behind the restaurant was weird too. The crow had disturbed Liam. It had looked so focused and intent when it stared at the restaurant, and Mr. Button had gazed directly at the crow when he'd come out. And what was in that bag Mr. Button had thrown away? The restaurant didn't generate trash as lumpy as what had been in that plastic bag. And Mr. Button had been protective of the bag. He hadn't let Liam take it. Why? What did Mr. Button toss out that day? And then there were Liam's dreams. What exactly was his subconscious trying to tell him?
These are all good questions.
Liam's dreams and his observations.
But it's funny he brings up the crow a bunch as one of the most suspicious factors.
Yeah, he's like, that crow.
Yeah. And it was for us too. We're like, that crow though. We've been paying attention. That crow next to the dumpsters.
Yep.
Not okay.
Drew's injuries and Liam's discoveries with Mr. Button's past combined to transform his doubts into certainty. He couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Liam now believed that Mr. Button was everything Drew had said he was. He really was a monster. I need to take a break for a second because my knee.
Okay.
Back in a sec. Yep. Yeah, we had a little break. But I think we've got like 9 or so pages to go. And so that we've got plenty of steam left to like ramble at the end about our overall thoughts and whatever. We're probably going to do this one in the next part. I think we've covered all the big shocks and stir-ups so far. There's more to come because this is twisty as hell.
Yeah. Oh, it gets twistier.
Gets real twisty. But just to leave it here and people can go and think about what they think or what did they think, who did they agree with, what did they think is happening if they've never heard it before.
You've heard my...
Definitely comment what you think at this point. I'm really interested to think at this point, what are people taking away from it? What do people think? Do you think Drew is taking the piss? Do you think Mr. Button's a good guy? Do you think like it's all up to like do you think Liam's right? Do you think it's real? You know, all that stuff.
You throw us a like if you enjoy the comment or content as well. But yeah,
we get a lot of like downvotes for people who are like, I don't agree that Drew was innocent. I'm like, I'm like...
I've been very biased about where I land on this so far, but I think it's a good journey, and probably the opinion that I've landed on maybe not be the most common one, but we'll see. We'll explain all our thoughts on it as we go, but yeah.
I think a lot of people don't agree with us, but that's everything, honestly. We just like to think about different stuff, and I always like come and bring my own thoughts to stuff and then take away what I want.
And I really, really, really liked this story.
Yeah, other people hated it, and I'm like, no, it's a good story. Like, it's a really good story. But yeah, we'll catch up in the next one because I think we've done quite a long stint this time.
And
we'll probably
finish it out tomorrow.
Part 3. Yeah, we'll finish it out tomorrow. So catch you then.